The opinions expressed in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Time Warner Cable.
What's your tomorrow?
To call the board meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then I'd like to ask Katie to read our mission statement.
Gladly. We educate all students to be college, career, and community ready, inspired to succeed in our diverse world.
All right, thank you, Katie. Still loud here. Next is our open forum. This is a time for the board to hear comments from members of the public, and the members of the public can share information with the board. Prior to starting your comments, please provide your name and address. And as a reminder, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Also, please know that Wisconsin's open meeting laws prohibit the board from discussing matters brought during the public participation period of the meeting agenda. If the board would want any additional or clarifying information from you, a member of the administration will be in contact with you to follow up on behalf of the board. So at this point, I have one person who's indicated she'd like to speak before the board, and I'll call up Larissa Butters.
A resident of the Navarino neighborhood, and I believe some of you received a letter from one of my neighbors, Rob Miller, today about our concerns about Washington Middle School and also East High School. We are concerned about, first I should give you a little background information. My husband and I moved into the neighborhood a year ago. I have been substitute teaching for the Green Bay Area School District for the last year and a half, and I've been in Washington Middle School. I am concerned about it because that is the school that my son will be going to in 11 years about. And I want it to be a good school for him. What I see there now, as far as behavioral issues go in the classroom, I'm concerned about sending my son there because I don't think he'll be able to learn. I know there is no overnight instant fix for this, but our neighborhood would like to be part of helping to improve the behavioral and the academic success at Washington. We want students that finish going to Washington High School to be active community citizens, not just living off welfare because they didn't learn anything in middle school because of the behavioral issues going on. The average class size there is 30 kids in a classroom. And when you're in there as a substitute teacher, you don't know what you're gonna get. Some days there might be lesson plans. I was subbing for a math teacher that was out on maternity leave, but it had been so irregular as to who was in her classroom. There was no consistent lesson plans. The kids didn't know what they were doing. I was lucky to find a textbook and teach the kids a lesson from hopefully where they were. The same thing with the FACE position. The school district struggled to find a FACE teacher for the majority of the year. And I saw that one was found, which is great to hear. But then, lo and behold, come May, I saw posted on WeCan that you're looking for another face teacher for Washington Middle School. So we're concerned about keeping and preserving the teachers that are there already, as well as behavioral and academic success there. So whatever you can let us know what we can do to help. If it's changing something, we're glad to come in and change it, but I hear from people all the time who are looking to move to downtown Green Bay that they will not move to our neighborhood because of Washington Middle School. That's a huge problem. But we would like to help fix this. That's all.
All right, thank you. And you get back to it? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you tonight. We will be contacting you as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then
Thank you.
also, I didn't see a letter that you referenced. Is that an email or?
It was an email from Rob.
Did anybody?
Rob Miller? Rob
Did
Miller?
anybody get it?
Okay.
And it would have happened just today?
It would have happened just today.
Yeah, and we didn't get it.
Nobody got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if he's, have him check the addresses, which are on
Okay,
our
yeah, I'll have
website.
him check the addresses.
Yeah, or if you call the district.
Call the district office.
District office and ask for Sandy Heller,
Okay.
and she can help you if you're having trouble getting the emails to us.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I will let him know.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next is our roll call. Sandy?
Becker?
Here.
Dorf?
He's excused.
Ganch? Here. Maloney? Here. McCoy? Here. Wagner?
Excused.
Warren? Here. Grossart?
Here.
All right, we have five board members present. Ed Dorf and Chris Wagner are excused. We're also joined at the table to my left, Dr. Michelle Langenfeld, our superintendent. To the far right is John Grossart, who's the vice president of Intercity Student Council from Preble High School. And to my far left is Sandy Heller, who's the board secretary. Next, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the following minutes. Regular board meeting, May 15th, 2017. Special board meetings, May 24th and June 5th, 2017. Special board meetings, closed sessions, May 15th, May 24th, and June 5th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes have been improved. Next is, actually, you wanted to,
You want to do communications and then we'll...
yeah, there's no communications to be placed on file.
Okay.
Your turn.
All right. I would move to reorder the agenda so that we now entertain the organizational support report because several members of our audience are here for that section. It could be hours before we get to it.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Chance?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy? Aye.
Carried 5-0. So at this point, I will turn over the operational support session to Andrew Becker, who will facilitate
Okay, so we just swapped them all.
the whole thing. Yeah, just
Right.
run through your whole thing.
Okay. I move that the resolution authorizing the transfer of funds, establishment of escrow account, and defeasance of general obligation promissory notes as presented be approved.
Second.
So we have Andrew
Andy and
and Mike
Mike.
Barrett.
That was very kind of you. And Mike on his way home back down to Milwaukee.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's waited many nights, so we thought we'd
It's,
help him
it's,
out
I always
tonight.
like to see Mike because when he comes, it means we're doing some cool stuff with either money or facilities. And I think we have two agenda items tonight. Today, literally, as I indicated in the board update, they sold the debt. So 58 of the $68 million was sold today. When Mike texted me, I said, I think I said, that's really good, isn't it? And he confirmed, yes, that's very good. So we did well in the debt sale.
A motion on the defeasance right now.
Oh, this is the defeasance? Okay, thank you. Sure. Traditionally, what we've done, defeasing debt, so two agenda items, that's the second. The first one, defeasing debt. We've done this the last several years, and so where we have the ability to levy now for future debt, That's what this motion is. I did, I think I did include a little bit of an update. I received a call from Quarles and Brady, who is the debt or our legal counsel in that respect. They did increase the dollar amount by $5,000, so it's about $1.07 million today. Is what we're going to be asking for a motion. All the paperwork will be filled out and submitted here within the next couple of days. Are there any questions on the defeasing of the debt?
Basically, it's just pre-funding existing debt payments. The district has been managing its overall levy, utilizing the debt levy to prepay debt when possible. And as Andy said, we've done this we've done it off and on for several years, actually, when the situation was appropriate.
Any other questions? Sandy?
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye. Carried 5-0.
I move that the resolution awarding the sale of $58,255,000 general obligation school building and improvement bonds as presented be approved.
Second?
Again, very competitive sale today, 2.9%. Mike just indicated before the meeting, so it's the first time that we've seen rates below 3% prior to the November election. So, full disclosure, we did get a downgrade. I think it was public, made public. We're still on a top tier, so we're still within about the top 4 gradings, primarily due to a couple factors. Number one, we did have a use of fund balance in 15-16. We did. It was planned. They fully admitted that. They believe that it will not happen again. They see strengths in our budgeting process, but that was a factor. As well, they brought up for the first time the stability of the Wisconsin retirement system, which Mike, I think that took you back just a little bit during the rating call review.
And I had a rating call review with Moody's on another district where it was not mentioned. So sometimes the analysts you get has an impact on things, but your rating is still very solid at the AA2. There's AAA is the highest, AA1, which you was the second highest, and now you're AA2, so the third tier. So very strong, and that's reflected in the rates we were able to receive today on the bids.
Mike, just a quick question.
Sure.
One of the things that the use of the fund balance is an interesting concept, since it was intentional as part of the previous referendum that the board had made the promise to voters that we would use $2 million of the fund balance to address the project at Chapel. So
that was part of the fund balance utilization, and that had been discussed previously, the last referendum, and had been reflected, but was the overall.
It was the
overall draw you had in that year. And just to give you a little perspective, when they look at districts, you're not only compared to Wisconsin school districts, but districts across the country in terms of their measurements and matrix and things. And your fund balance and cash position was on the low end, actually probably dipping into the AA2 levels when you were at AA1. And so when you had that draw, it moved you further from that. That being said, the AA2 is an excellent rating, and I tell districts you can't make every decision when it comes to operating a school district solely based on the potential impact to your credit rating. We hope you keep that in mind when some decisions are made, but the AA2 is still a very, very good rating.
So just for clarity purposes, it was a combination of the planned use of the fund balance. Was it, let me ask you this, percentage-wise, is there a range that they said that would push you back up? Because I think that's been an ongoing discussion with our community about what that percentage should be, and across the state.
Yeah.
I just want to hear that, because often we hear it's too big.
Prior to our fund balance use, we're at about 18%. We're now down at 15%, which still exceeds the board policy. Our board policy says 15% of our general operations fund. So we exceed our board policy. The comparables that this rating agent shared is that a typical AA1 would have a fund balance of in excess of 25 to 40%. So for us to grow to 25, we went from 18 to 15%, that represented about $7 million. We would literally have to double our fund balance for that to get within the range of what they would like to be a AA1.
Okay.
Yeah, and you made a comment, you know, fund balance is always hotly debated. And the good thing, it was a one-time expenditures
Yes.
that was used for. If you're using it for ongoing operations, that's a bigger problem. But you're not doing that. So one-time purpose, which is fine. And there are, in every district, there may be some community members that kind of question why those dollars are being held. Now there's some proposals at the state level to maybe shift how you receive your state aid, which may eliminate the need for as high fund balances for cash flow purposes. It'll be interesting to see, one, I'm not sure if that's going to move forward, but if it would, what Moody's reaction would be at that time, because right now the district does have to, will have to, after this upcoming year, will have to cash flow borrow again because of the timing of your taxes and state aid payments relative to your expenditures. So it's always a kind of a moving target. But again, I think, yeah, you're probably that 25+% to really solidify yourself at the AA1. You know, you were right on that lower edge. Maybe just even getting to the low 20s would be helpful. Because the overall, everything, the district's finances are in solid shape. The tax base is very solid. All those things are very good. Enrollment trends have been solid. And so, yeah, we had an indication, because we've kind of mimicked their scoring methodology, at least the initial scoring, and we knew that there was going to be some rating pressure. We did do some extra preparation. We did consider possibly looking at a different rating agency, but that agency gets very tough at the higher end of the AA range. So we were still more comfortable with Moody's. And so a little disappointing, but not, I guess, surprising. And again, you don't make every decision based on your credit rating. So AA2 is still an excellent rating. Many people would like to be in your position. So, describe.
Yeah, please.
Oh, so
please.
we did take bids. Anything else on the rating? The rating report is attached at the back. I won't spend a lot of time going through it because I think we hit the highlights. We received 4 bids, and some names that we typically only see, Merrill Lynch being one that we only see on larger issues. And they were the winning bidder at 2.8976%, which is a great rate. Earlier this, 3 months ago, we would have been very happy with a 3.25 to 3.5. So the rates have moved into your favor. The number of bids, we were expecting maybe a couple more. It's hard to say if the rating had an impact. There were other deals in the marketplace. But again, very, very good rate. Issue summary, it's $58.255 million. We'll hold the remaining, and we'll talk about that in a second, until 18. July 12th will be the day-to-date closing date. That's when the dollars will be deposited with the district. Maturities, these are the years 21 through 37, and this will be part of your levy this fall. And then the AA2, which we've described, and then the rate in Merrill Lynch. Going to the next page, you'll see that we're doing a 2-phase borrowing. And one of the primary reasons we went with this structure is that there's some uncertainties at the state level. There's some proposals that potentially could impact your overall levy, the low revenue ceiling, and we wanted to have some flexibility this fall in terms of where the district sets its levy. If you wanted to take advantage of some other proposals, would we maybe restructure or do the second phase structure a little bit differently to make it more easier to maybe roll in some of those other proposals if they do end up being part of the state budget. We only have, right now, we have the first just 2 years of principal payments scheduled. Those also will be bank qualified, which is lower interest rates, but that's a smaller factor on such a short issue. It was really for the levy flexibility, not knowing where the overall state budget's going to be. And some proposals that may impact your overall levy. We just wanted to not lock you in at this point if we didn't have to, so.
By the time we would issue that, we would know a lot more at the state level. So it offers us a lot of flexibility between now and then, by the time we actually set the levy at the end of October.
That makes sense.
So, any other questions?
Great. Sandy?
Becker? Janice? Maloney?
Aye.
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 Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Andy.
Good summer.
I move that the 2016-17 amended budget as presented be approved.
Second.
Does Andy want to
Probably,
say anything?
no.
Yeah, can you answer the questions for us, Mike?
Otherwise, can we skip that one and go to
Maybe
the
we could
next?
skip, but
And
I
then
would
come back.
Move to skip
think
just in
he's-
case he has to deal with something with Mike.
he's coming
Is he
back?
Okay.
We just want to know if you wanted to say anything about the amended budget motion.
I think as I indicated in the write-up, we've got everything covered and everything that we anticipate. You know, a budget is a planning document, and through the fiscal year from when you approve it at the end of October until now, some things have changed. And, you know, even some workers' comp things that came up through the year, or even just changes in the way that we've wanted to implement some projects and initiatives, everything is covered. So this reflects those changes that were made sporadically throughout the year, as well as final plans on expenditures as well as revenues.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Sandy?
Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stay here
I
now
think
just
now
in
you're
case.
All right.
safe to go.
Yeah, now that you stay, we don't need you anymore, so.
I move that Camera Corner Connecting Point be awarded the bid for replacement of computing devices coming off the lease as presented be approved.
Second.
Here comes Diane Dersch.
Hi there. Due to the change in order, I was going to have John Otto, my Director of Technology, also join me, but I am completely prepared to share information with you. You know, we have found that Chromebooks are very popular. We have a lot of devices in our schools, and we're finding that they are being used a lot, and we've gotten a lot of requests for them. We have many devices going off lease at this point. We made purchases in 2014 for devices for our students to use, and now that lease has expired. And so we were searching for, number one, the best device for our students to meet educational needs, and then number two, the best price for them. So what we did was take it all the way through the RFP process. But first what we did was take a look at what are the best devices for our students, and we took the approach of we're going to give our vendors two models that we want the best prices for. And so one was a Dell Chromebook, and the other was a Lenovo brand Chromebook. We had students test these, and we also put them through durability tests on our own so that we knew that they would last. And our RFP included then two different brands, makes and brands of devices. We had 11 different vendors provide proposals, and we had 17 different proposals that came through. And so in your board report, you see a recommendation for us that we select the Camera Corner Connecting Point proposal which is for the Lenovo N23 Chromebooks. We have had versions of N21s and N22s in our district, so these are updated versions. And so we have the cost of those 13,000 devices there. Now, you might say, what does that cost include? That costs include not only the hardware. Well, hi, John. Thanks for joining me. I let them know about, look, he's a little out of breath even. I let them know about the change of order, so I'll let you breathe for a moment. I was just talking about what the cost of devices included. And so that does include the hardware, which is the N23, but also the warranty. The warranty was very important to us because our biggest question was, what's the turnaround time? How long will it take for you to fix these devices? We have a technical staff, but it's a small technical staff. And so we decided to take the approach this time of having our products warrantied so that we would be able to have them repaired quickly and returned, and us also having spares. Did you want to go on from here?
No, that's very accurate. Here's the device we're looking at, which is Lenovo N23. And we had this as well as several other devices over at West High School for several weeks for students to take a look at. As well as that, we did what we call a durability test, where we dropped from about this height. I'm not going to do it today, but we were able to. You've seen me do it.
I have.
And
We believe you, John.
yeah. And if a device couldn't take a drop from desk height, student desk height, it wasn't worth considering to go on. So we looked at that, and then we, like I said, we got the feedback from the students, and we narrowed it down to 2 devices, this one here and also a Dell device. And at that point, we went out to RFP. We had talked to some vendors ahead of time where we got their devices, and they let us break them. And some of these were broken so bad we had to put them in plastic bags and send them back. And then we had another number of vendors, which we just kind of came out of no place at bid also. So we had 11 vendors submitting 17 different proposals.
Yep, that's what we talked about.
And part of it, the big part of it, was, like Diane says, with the warranty. How well they could respond to the warranty. So that's how we narrowed it down. And Camera Corner, because of their price and also because of the warranty, and they were the high point getter.
So we have and are looking for your approval for the purchase of these devices, but that's step 1 in the process, because in order to avoid that big spike of a purchase for this year, we now, after your approval, will take a look at our best leasing opportunities at this point, because we want to even out those payments throughout up to 4 years. And so that will be the next step as we move forward with this, if we receive board approval, and then we will provide more information to you via the board update regarding where we sit with that lease agreement. We are looking at returning 11,000 devices. I've gotten some good news that we have collected about half of those at this point from the schools, and they're ready to be boxed and palletized. But think about the work that our staff has to do, and that we are working on returning 11,000 devices, and then also with your approval, we'll move forward with the ordering once we get the leasing figured out, and we'll do that very quickly. We will order 13,000 devices. So it will be the summer of 24,000 devices, 11,000 going away, 13,000 coming back. And then, of course, that deployment that takes place after that. The good news is that we've been really solid with our implementation thus far, and we have good planning moving forward. The way we have planned this with the warranty coverage and the repairs of broken items, I think will help us But we've also done some pre-work with our white glove service, we call it, where devices are taken out of boxes, they're inventoried, they're put into the right domain. And so we've got another company taking care of that, so that by the time we get them, okay, it is our hope that we will have them into the schools ready to go within 2 weeks of the start of school. And that is no small feat either. So, you know, summer, people think it's long, but for us in the technical world, summer vacation is very short with the things going on. So being able to handle this in a timely manner moving forward will help us stay on track with our timeline. So those are the things that we have. We have our recommendation before you, and wondering if you have any questions from there.
A few questions. The Chromebooks will be at middle school, high school, or is this for elementary too?
For elementary as well.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we purchased our computers 3 or 4 years ago, we purchased an array of iPads, personal computers, and Chromebooks. So I'm just wondering if you can give me some details of why we're shifting to Chromebook. What is it that's had made us decide that that's a better device in the majority of cases, and are we keeping the PCs and iPads that we have, and this is replaced? Anyway, kind of fill in some of those details for me.
Very good and relevant question. We still stick with the, you know, we want our teachers and our students to match the best learning tool with the task, the educational task that they have. So we don't want to limit our kids by saying you can only work with this. So we still have available iPads and MacBook Airs as well as Windows laptops in our schools, so that you know, they're on carts and teachers can use them as needed as well. But for your general purpose, Chromebooks, it's a couple things. They're most popular because when a student cracks it open, it takes a very short amount of time to get logged in, for it to spin up and a kid to log in, versus potentially some other laptops where, you know, we've heard teachers say, it took our kids 12 minutes to get logged in on these devices. Also, the Google Administrative Control Panel allows us to manage a whole fleet of these devices through one control panel. You want to elaborate more on that as well?
Yeah, the management does, it's something we've never seen before as far as managing devices. For example, which are testing, you know, our forward testing and access testing. We're able to, one person can change all the Chrome devices for the entire district or any part of the district within literally minutes. You know, which is something we never had the option to do before. Another thing which Diane didn't mention is the data that's being collected from these devices is really extraordinary. We're able to find out what devices are being used, when they're being used, when they're not being used. So it allows us to maximize our investment, and in a way we've never seen before.
We've had principals say, oh, we need more devices, but as we have found that, hey, there's a cart that's being not used very much, so how about you take a look at that cart and start implementing that into your fleet as well. So John is right. Within this past year, we've gotten a lot of information about the specific use of the devices. And again, out of requests from our teachers, our students, the Chromebooks seem to be the most usable and user-friendly of all the devices.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah. So, how do we get from 17 proposals to the number of acceptable proposals? What made a proposal unacceptable?
Okay, excellent question, Mr. Becker. First of all, we base 60% of our decision on price. So we used a formula where the low price received the most points, and then it went proportionally down from there. Then we discussed that in order to keep the Chromebooks in the students' hands as much as possible, like Diane said, we were going to move to a different model with warranty. So therefore, a large part of our evaluation criteria is based on the ability to perform a quick turnaround on the warranty. So with that, a local vendor, you know, where they are closer, that helped them out, and also Camera Corner Connecting Point is a Lenovo registered repair shop. So they were able to earn our extra points that others couldn't because of that being the repair, warranty shop.
We do have our whole selection criteria compiled in a spreadsheet, if you would like to review that.
I think I would, and I think I might need to before I could vote, but I guess I have some more questions here. So I'm still a little bit unclear on what, so we have a top three, and we have, what again was it that made them unacceptable, that they didn't get from, or did I mishear 17, or otherwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 10 or 11 were listed as acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So what again makes it unacceptable that they didn't even get to the 11, 10, 11?
What would allow them, first of all, there were 11 vendors. Some vendors made more than one proposal.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So that's how we get.
So
up to
all the
17.
vendors,
right.
all 11 vendors had an acceptable proposal.
Yeah.
Some more than one.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Yes, we received multiple proposals from a few vendors.
And then if the computer shattered when you dropped it, they lost a lot of money. I mean,
Well, we didn't even get to that point.
right.
When we took a good number of computers in from different manufacturers, this is Lenovo, we had Acer, we had HP and stuff like that. If they couldn't stand a drop, which we would expect an elementary classroom to see quite often, that device wasn't worth considering. So the only two that made it to the consideration point were the Lenovo and Dell.
So if I'm looking at the cost formula here, if you say the cost formula is 1,200 points, which theoretically is 60%, should be 60% of the maximum total points if you got the maximum total points. But the way the formula is set up, you could be double the price and you would only lose half the points, correct?
If you were double the price of the low bidder,
I
you
think-
would get half as many points. It's
Okay.
proportional in that way, you're correct.
Yeah, so you could be, I mean, you could be very ridiculous with the price and not lose all your points.
There is a point where, yes, where you wouldn't lose all the points, but there is a point where there's not enough points to make up.
That you can't make up, okay. I guess I'm concerned, and don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely a supporter of the value of local service and local
Yeah.
business and some premium value to that. I absolutely get that. I'm a little concerned about a difference of well over $400,000. I wouldn't be asking this question if they were within a couple of percent.
Sure.
I absolutely would not have a question about that, but what's the difference in turnaround time between the local and the places that we would mail it in? Do they not just instant ship when you have one going back?
No, they don't. They fix that device, and then they send it back when it's fixed.
So every one of these vendors just hold it, fix the one device, and ship it back. None of them, to get a 13,000 unit contract, will cross ship.
No, your question is very accurate, because there were several vendors who would give us 2% extra devices just for that purpose.
Okay.
But their price was high enough that it wasn't enough to make up the difference.
Okay, they give you 2% more devices to cover that, and then
Right.
jack up the price 5%.
That's correct.
Okay, so were the ones that didn't make the top 3 in the summary, was there a pretty big drop off after those 3, or did you just want to highlight the 3? In the summary sheet, we have Connecting Corner, Insight, and TRA.
Right.
So there were more acceptable.
Absolutely.
I mean, did it really nosedive after that, or?
It did. These were by far the top 3. It did drop down considerably after that. Okay. See, one of the things that happens is when you're dealing with a major manufacturer like Lenovo, not every, from what I understand from vendors, not every vendor gets the same wholesale price. So therefore, it's difficult for some vendors to compete with others if they have favored status.
Okay, so were any of the, regardless of vendor qualifications, were any of the bids less than the 2.698, or was that the?
That was the low.
That was the low.
Yeah, they received the maximum number of points in the cost formula.
And they lost their points on warranty turnaround?
Yeah, here's, I can be happy to read it to you.
The criteria, sure.
Yeah. Of the total 100%, 16% is on supportability and cost of transition, of which there were 3 criteria that we judged on. One was the local availability for a repair service. Another one is supportability, which is turnaround time, because even though they may be close, they may not have a close turnaround time. And another one dealt with the extended warranty, because the manufacturer's warranty only covers 1 year, and we're looking for a 3-year warranty. So therefore, if we had to deal with one organization for the first year and another organization for the following years, that was a disadvantage. We felt that we wanted to know what we were getting to begin with.
So, Camera Corner Services have local warranty service on a 3-year warranty?
Yes.
And then the Insight, we would have to pay extra to get a 3-year warranty?
They had the warranty, however, it went from being supported by Lenovo to being supported by a third party.
I see. But now, wouldn't Camera Corner would also be supported by Lenovo, but they're in an official Lenovo shop, so that makes it more seamless?
Yes. And, and the fact that we can drive over there with devices, I mean, it's a huge advantage. And the other ones, for example, another thing which affected some of the other ones far away, we would have to pay postage. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal.
And packaging.
Yeah.
Was
but
the other one.
On top of the bid, or including?
For every time something was
broken. I see. Okay. All right. So, I guess like I said, as far I stand by what I said about some, but not $400,000 worth of difference for local service. But I also get not changing warranty companies midstream to a third party where they're a third party contracting out the warranty service to the lowest bidder. So put that in the mix, and I'm okay with the difference.
As part of our RFP, we included the selection criteria. So every vendor had a chance to react to it even before, where it was out there. So that if there was an issue with it, they had a chance to bring it to our attention, or if if they felt we were being unfair or something, they would have a chance to address that, because we were as transparent as we possibly could be during this whole process.
It's just I guess everyone has to weigh the difference, and I wonder what someone could offer a lot of the bells and whistles for way more on the price, like not just this much more, but it seems to me the way the formula works, you could get, it's at least possible. Someone could come in ridiculously different on price, and then we'll overnight you one every time something goes wrong, but we're charging you, but that didn't happen here, and now that I know about the warranty piece, I'm good with it. Okay. Thank you.
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
Ganch? Aye. McCoy? Aye. Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Okay, and I apologize for being late.
Well, you weren't late. We were early.
No, we rescheduled, not
We
late.
reordered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I move the school meal account charges collection policies and procedure for school meal account charges and collections rule as presented be approved.
Second.
We had discussion about this 2 weeks ago. Sandy?
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Canch?
Carried 5-0.
I move that the facility use rules and regulations as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Canch?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the Chief of Community and Pre-K 16 programs job description as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Canch?
Carried 5-0.
I move that the table of organization be modified to reflect the change of the 1.0 student information system manager to a 1.0 administrator of student information systems as and the associated job description as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
Canch?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the table of organization be modified to reflect the addition of a 1.0 administrator of district co-curricular programming, 12 months, salary group 6 as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
Canch? Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the transfer of Vicki Byer, Director of Special Education Pupil Services, 12 months in the district office to interim Chief of Community and PK-16 programs, 12 months at the district office, effective July 1 as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Warren?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Canch? Maloney? Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Move that the transfer of Stacy Williams, Student Information System Manager, 12 months to Administrator of Student Information Systems, 12 months as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
Canch? McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Move that the transfer of Timothy Flood, Associate Principal Activities Director, 11 months at East High School to Administrator of District Co-Curricular Programming, 12 months as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Canch?
Carried 5-0.
Move that the transfer of Brendan Whitfield from Associate Principal 11 months at Washington to Associate Principal 11 months at Preble as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Canch? Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the transfer of Seth Vinal, Associate Principal 11 months Preble to Associate Principal 11 months at Washington as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Canch?
Carried 5-0.
Move that the transfer of Nathan Bronick, Special Education Teacher at Doty and Tank to Elementary Associate Principal at Baird Elementary as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Canch? Warren?
Aye. Carried 5-0. And I think Nathan is
Nathan is here.
here. Oh, there.
There he is. Congratulations. He can go and enjoy his summer evening. You may go enjoy your summer evening.
Well, I heard they're talking about math.
Oh.
Good answer.
Oh, we like him already.
Okay, I move that the salary adjustment for Lori Peacock, Director of College Career Community Readiness as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Warren?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Canch? Maloney? Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that 1.26% base wage increase for clerical food service maintenance monitors, noon hour supervisor staff as for those employed as of July 1, 2017 as presented be approved.
Second. Sandy?
Janice?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that an additional wage increase of 51 cents per hour for noon hour supervisors effective July 1, 2017 as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Janice?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move the additional wage increase of $162 per hour for carpenters effective July 1st, 2017 as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that a 1.26% base wage increase for support staff for those employed as of July 1, 2017 as listed be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Okay. I don't think we moved consent agenda, that stays at the end
Yeah.
probably.
We'll
so
do
we
that
can
at
move
the
that.
end, yeah.
So, alright, so then that would be the final
That's-
motion under organizational
Okay.
support.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So then we will return back to our agenda. And next on our agenda is our monitoring reports. And thank you for your patience waiting. We had a lot of guests that we...
Once again, I want to say thank you for, good. Just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to come before the board with our monitoring report on mathematics. We know that it's an extremely important subject for the district, something that is vital to our focus area of academic excellence, as well as engagement and making sure that our students are college, career, and community ready. The report that we present to you tonight has a great deal of information around our past practices, current practices, data around performance, as well as future next steps. And I'd like to share that Nancy Chartier, Jennifer Egan, and Mike Fries will be presenting our information tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Magus. First of all, as Mr. Magus mentioned, we're going to touch briefly on the history, our current reality, and also our planned next steps, both at the elementary level and at the secondary level. We'll begin with the universal, shall I say the universal general education. We'll also look at some data and assessments, and then look at the intervention system that has been created over the past 2 years. And then at the conclusion of the elementary presentation, Mr. Fries will then proceed with the secondary. Universal instruction. I'll start there. First of all, our math resource that we're currently using was adopted. The Houghton Mifflin Expressions resource was adopted in 2012-2013, and it promotes, primarily promotes whole group lessons and activities, and also promotes student using direct procedures. As most of you are aware, in 2014-15, we developed our written curriculum based on the Common Core State mathematics standards to ensure that the curriculum was aligned and being used across multiple department areas in a consistent manner. I'm pleased to say that this has been our second year of the jury process in order to make sure that we are constantly checking a living curriculum document. We have at that time implemented a juring process, and in that juring process, teachers submit recommendations for the panel of teachers to take a look at any changes that need to be made to the content essential documents that would bring more clarity or relevance. Any part that would be juried that would change the meaning of the document would then be brought to the Board of Education for approval. An example of a piece that was juried in this year, I would just add that in the Common Core State Standards, they do address counting on as one of the strategic actions for students to use in the area of subtraction. A piece that is not mentioned is the fact that we have counting back from strategies when dealing with or when having children learn subtraction. And we have juried that counting back from strategy to subtraction so that children can really grasp the conceptual understanding of subtraction. The next piece, our math renewal resource, is coming due in 2018-19. We are currently looking at a resource that would support a workshop model allowing teachers to meet the individual needs of our diverse learners, and also one that promotes student constructing strategies and aligns with our assessments as well as our interventions. Also, the resource we're looking for that would promote multiple tools that use to promote students to develop strategies across multiple lessons. One piece that we have added to our current repertoire for teachers to use and students to use since 2013-14, there have been approximately 7 schools that have implemented a Dreambox, which is a resource. It's an online adaptive resource that it's a blended learning experience, and it allows students to construct and use multiple strategies to solve mathematical concepts. It also helps students in constructing their own mathematical understandings and strategies. Another piece that I didn't have on the Power piece, but on the PowerPoint is cross-number discovery puzzles, much like the traditional word puzzles that we've created with the language side. The cross-discovery puzzles, the cross-number discovery puzzles allow children to use multiple strategies to solve cross-number puzzles. It really is engaging and also allows for children to see multiple ways in which they can construct an answer to a particular problem. Professional learning. We know that we have brought in front of you multiple times that we speak of Advantage Math Recovery, of AVMR. What is AVMR? AVMR is a professional learning that helps teachers understand how children develop numeracy. And during the process of their professional development, teachers develop, it is based on 5 developmental foundational areas in which the teacher learns more deeply about and how to implement them into their instructional strategies, such as number words and numerals, adding and subtracting, structuring numbers, place value, and multiplication and division. A little bit about another little piece of Advantage Math Recovery. It's instructional activities that allow students to construct concepts and skills. Researcher Jo Bohler, better known for the growth mindset for mathematics, and her research and work, data of 13 million students, showed the lowest achieving students worldwide were those who used a memorized strategy, whereas the highest achieving students were those who brought the thought of mathematics as a set of connected big ideas. Any questions? I know I'm going at lightning speed here, so please. Some very impressive data over the last 3 years. We've trained 562 elementary staff members in Advantage Math Recovery, Course 1 and Course 2, with 23 administrators also have been trained. What they will use with their professional learning, it is embedded professional development that they're using as ongoing professional development and assessment and instructional practices. So the instructional practices that they are having for children to construct a deeper sense of concept of skills in mathematics is also being measured by the AVMR assessment. And in just a moment, we're going to take a look at some of our AVMR baseline data for the first time. On an average, the math interventionists have provided more than 40 hours, our math champions have provided more than 40 hours of professional development to his or her staff. We have approximately 555 classroom teachers, if you were wondering. The professional learning had been offered to teachers of special education, bilingual teachers, and we've extended it also to our ESL teachers. The goal is that everyone has a depth of understanding of our assessment and also the common language.
I just want to note, as we change to these important new instructional strategies and methodologies, that our model for ongoing professional development is to use the math interventionists. In our literacy model, we have literacy coaches and literacy interventionists. In math, we have just the interventionists, but they've been serving in a capacity that is ongoing professional development, and I really appreciate the resourcefulness that we've had related to that.
And to that means they have, all of our math recovery interventionists have been trained to the math champion status, so therefore that they can provide the professional development and training and certify AVMR, Advantage Math Recovery, right at their individual sites. So every school has a champion-trained math, well, 0.5. So some of them share an interventionist, but every school has access to an embedded professional developer who can continue to certify new employees and ongoing employees in Advantage Math Recovery. So to Mr. Magnus's piece, that we've taken a body of professionals and continued their depth and training to the math champion level. A little bit of, I'd like for us to just take a moment to take a look at some of our historical data. And what I've prepared for you today is our longitudinal data over a 5-year period of time of our state assessments. We're all aware of the shifts in the state assessments, from WKCE to Badger to the Forward. In 3rd grade, we note that we have some significant, we're significantly below our average, state average, and our state assessments. A difference of about 13.4% in 2012-13. In 13-14, about 17.7% below the state proficiency. In 14-15, 12.7%, and then in 15-16, approximately 12.3% below the state proficiency rate. Looking at our 4th grade 5-year longitudinal data, we see that beginning in 2012-13, or prior to 2011-2012, we're nearly at proficiency. 2012-13, again, we see a flat line, well below the state proficiency level, to a slight decline of 16.6%. In our 15-16. We have not yet received our 16-17 results to the state assessment. Excuse me. In our 5th grade mathematics, we see the flat line and then a decrease and then a slight increase in 15-16. It appears on that type of graph it's a slight increase, but when we crunch the numbers, it's a deficit of 10.9% for both those 14-15 and 15-16 years. I share this data with us, with everyone tonight, to show that we've had a flat line to a slightly decrease over the last 4 years, 5 years in our mathematics state assessment. There are many reasons for that, but one can speculate that the bottom line is that we still continue to be well below the state average in mathematics, and we are flatline making little to no growth to change the trajectory in a positive direction moving forward. Any question before we take a look at our STAR data, that any discussion we'd like to have on our historical 5-year state assessment data?
When did we started AVMR when? What year? I mean, I know it was very small the first year.
It is, yes. 13-14 was our first year that we actually started it in 7 of our schools. We have 15 schools remaining to be trained in AVMR Course 2. So we are very much still in our developmental stages of this shift of instruction. So the positive is that we've identified a need, and we know that we have to change what we're doing in order to change the line into a positive projectile.
So, and I know you're coming to us with the pilot later, so I get that too, but in those schools that have been doing it the longest, are you seeing indication that scores are improving? Are you, so there's enough indication from those schools that in continuing to invest in this district-wide is probably worth it?
Yes, and not only are we seeing an increase.
And what are you seeing increases in?
We're seeing the increase in students' ability to reason around number sense. And because of that, as teachers teach to more complex concepts, they're taking them on much easier. When we speak of money, Jennifer works very, very closely as our math teacher leader in the field with both our math champions and teachers. Is there any other piece that you would like to add to what we see as an improvement since AVMR?
Well, since students really develop number sense, like Nancy mentioned money, so even though money isn't addressed in AVMR or like telling time, because they have such strong number sense, that really carries over into all the different Common Core state standards.
So is it too early to see state tests when we didn't get it this year yet? In those 7 schools is what I'm asking. Are we seeing a bump up in state tests, the STAR test, you know, what kind of these measures that you have before us would show an indication that that's improving?
So in just a moment, we'll take a look at our STAR assessments that are given at 1st and 2nd grade. What we do see is the increase, as Jennifer was saying, in conceptual understanding as we get to more complex texts, and as we know, we have limited assessments for students in the younger grades. State test starts at 3rd grade. Because of the intensity of the shift in conceptual understanding of understanding number for students, I think it'd be only fair to the student who has been exposed to this form of instruction and rigor to begin with kindergarten and follow that group up. That's why I present to the board tonight the first look at our AVMR data that will be coming. I'm going to ask that we begin that with, that will be our baseline data. Yeah, okay. And then every year to hold us accountable for those numbers to begin changing. Also keeping in mind that 13 of our schools finished course 1, so they're in-depth training on the assessment practices and the instructional practices this year, with 15 schools remaining to be trained in course 2, which takes them even more deeply into understanding the construction of the major concepts.
Okay. Right,
is that
thanks.
Fair enough?
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions? So now I would like to just take a look at our STAR data, and this will also be a form of data that we'll be monitoring from this year forward. STAR will be given 3 times a year. It will also be given at kindergarten. Depicting for you today, we have grades 1 and grade 2. We can see that our boost in our 2nd grade, or in our 1st grade, even when we review, and we'll take a look at it, it was difficult for me to determine which data do I show first. But when we look at our AVMR data, the positive, and note that our AVMR data is aligned to the Common Core state standards. So those kindergarten children, we have some data for you, that very strong data as being the first year that we would be collecting this and monitoring it. So at this point, we are seeing, and I believe our AGR schools are using this data this year also, so that would be another point of monitoring across more than one report for you. But as far as our spring STAR data from year to year, we know that 68% of our students are above grade level, 50% or above is grade level. And so for the purpose of grade 1 and 2, we know that we have children that are at grade level. And Jennifer, when we talk about intervention, is going to talk about the accelerated learning and the intentional teaching that has to occur in order for us to not only move our children who are proficient at grade level, but what about proficiency to advance? And so we're always looking to move our students forward and challenge them to the next level. Our historical data, as far as our STAR data, is again indication of much of what our state assessment was, very flatlined right now, with not much movement. I should make note that with the new forward exam, they have renormed. And so in order for our students to be proficient on the forward exam, they'll have to have a proficiency rate of 64.2% at third grade, and for advanced, 78.2%. At fourth grade, 67.7%, and 81% for advanced. And then in our fifth grade, we'll be looking at a 70.1 for proficiency and 77 for advanced. And again, these are your normal curve equivalents, percentile rankings. And I think it's important to note that as the forward exam gets more complex and more difficult, we have to consider, even with more intensity and more urgency, we have to really consider are our resources and our instructional practices meeting the needs that need to be met for the demands of a forward exam written as such. The forward exam, you have to apply. It's not as skill-based as previous exams. It's very much applied knowledge. And so to be able to carry what you've known, what you've learned across multiple points is extremely important in the forward exam. Any questions to that point? Yes.
So we had a while ago, whatever the state test of the month was at the time, they essentially renormed something and essentially jumped, I think, a full grade level in a year. So like you would be.
This is it.
Yeah. Okay. Are they doing it again?
No, this is, that would be a question for Stephen, who lives in this world every day, but I do know that this is the newly normed in 2016 that I believe we addressed in the retreat. So this is.
Okay, so this is
beyond, this would be grade level of our students, the 50%, or the 50, yes, the normal curve equivalency at 50. Okay. Would tell you that your child, that is your grade level. Right. And so you are absolutely correct. Now with it being renormed, students have to know beyond what we traditionally knew as grade level.
So they're bumping up the grade level by a whole grade, more than a whole grade equivalent?
20, Stephen, you want to help me out here, but I want to say at least that.
Stephen and Gwen,
it's 20 either side.
They're nodding.
It's typically 20 points either side, so it'd be pretty close to some.
Are you talking about achieving a normal, you're talking about achieving a normal curve equivalence of that, or are you talking about 70 whatever percent having to?
In order to be proficient on the state assessment, they'll have to score a 70.
Okay.
Instead of traditionally a 50 would have been the mark. So the bar is raising.
So so everyone's going to have to be a grade level above where they were before.
The general gist of what you're saying is true, Andrew. It's not a full grade level at all grades. It does depend on the grade. It varies anywhere from about a half a grade to a full grade, depending on which grade level you're linking to. There is a study that we can send out to the board. We could probably do that with the green letter this Friday that you could review. Renaissance just completed that study last fall. Obviously, the forward exam is relatively new for us. So in their linking study, basically what they're saying is, based on NCEs, a student would have to be anywhere between a half a grade level and a full grade level. Full grade level would be about a 70 NCE. Half a grade level to a full grade level advanced in order to be considered proficient on our current state assessment, which is the forward exam.
Okay. So, I'll toss test an easy one out here.
Thank you.
How did these score changes apply to private schools that take state money?
I don't think they do.
Well, it depends on the level of participation that that private school has in the state assessment system. And with parents opting out in many cases in private schools in our area, I don't know that it would have any impact on them necessarily.
But their level of proficiency is still the same.
Yeah, they would still be required to have the same level of proficiency, but I guess for me, the gist of the question is, they don't, as a public school, we're held accountable for testing every student. Private schools, under the current law, parents can opt out, and because of cell sizes, that school may not see any negative harm.
They may not even report anything out.
That's
Well, if they don't have any, if they have no state assessments, they couldn't report anything else.
So you don't know.
So the public schools have had expectations changed to teach students, because of the last one and this one, significantly more than one grade level, maybe pushing 2. And I would venture to guess that if public schools met the challenge of the extra year that was added last year, which it looks like we did, then they'll just keep the powers that be. I think, unless there's different powers that be, I could see them just adding another grade level every other year until they're requiring trigonometry for 5th graders. We're doing a great job. It frustrates me that we'd like to deal with data, and the bar, the bar is constant. I don't mind a high bar. I just like to know what the bar is, and if there's a definition of what's good math knowledge for a 12-year-old, that shouldn't wildly change. We should get where but it's going to wildly change, I think. It's unfortunate that I trust this table more than I trust what is changed on the test every year.
Well, and when you talk about things wildly changing, we haven't seen them wildly change in expecting less of our students. What we've seen is increased rigor expected on the state assessment over the years.
Yeah, a high bar is fine, but it's a bar that moves, changes. Sometimes isn't a bar. Sometimes is it's okay. Thank you.
You may find it interesting. The board may find it interesting to know that DPI conducted a third-party alignment study for the forward exam this past fall. They invited us to have representation. We had representation from the teaching and learning department to be part of that, and to get a handle on what are they, how are they aligned, how are the exam questions aligned to the standards, so that we can then, it serves a purpose for us as well to get a handle internally on how do our curriculum pieces align to grade level expectations, and so DPI has indicated an interest in trying to ensure that what the assessment is checking is not wildly out of line with grade level standards-based expectations. So I look forward to seeing how that continues to evolve, but it was nice to be included, and we jumped at that opportunity. So
who are the powers that be that decide where this bar is? I mean, where is that
So
decision
that's usually a process that takes place with the Department of Public Instruction and the legislature. So the Department of Public Instruction will come out with recommendations, and those generally have to be approved in some way by the state legislature.
But it must sit in some smaller committee. I mean, is it the education committee that sits with?
Yeah, and so there's actually an interesting,
process. All of a sudden realized I don't know.
So there's been a lot of turbulence, I'll call it, in the realm of state assessments in Wisconsin in the last 3 years, 4 years obviously, because we transitioned from the WKCE to the Badger exam, which was a consortium of states, back to a single state assessment in the forward exam as a result of legislation that was passed. That said we had to step away from being a part of the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. So ultimately it rests with DPI, the decision on what assessments we will use with regards to the standards, but there's always opportunities for public input.
And it's up to DPI to set the proficiency Mark.
Yep, and
Yeah.
they've done some standard setting, as Mike was alluding to. Last fall, they conducted standard setting, and basically to try to make sure, okay, we're going to say this is proficient in math. Is this based on our standards? Does what we're saying is proficiency match what our standards say? And again, we've been working through this process with the Common Core state standards, and Nancy had talked a little bit about how we're trying to address that in our work with AVMR. That has been an adjustment process for us, and what we're seeing is the expectations for a third grader today are not the same as they were 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, I hope, it'd be neat to see trigonometry at the 5th grade, but again, we continue to ask for more and more from our teachers and our students, and at some point, to your point, Andrew,
I just think the test scores will continue to change until certain folks see the failure rate that they want, so that their alternative proposal can come to the rescue.
And so I think that's why it's important that we continue to devote time and resources to being a part of the conversation. As we have had the opportunity with DPI, to ensure that it's in check with what's reasonable. Yeah. We certainly want high expectations for all of our students, but at the same time, they need to be reasonable expectations.
If I could just ask Julie a follow-up question. One of the things, though, that aren't we seeing with advanced math recovery is that we're seeing students able to conceptualize and actually increase their skill sets because of the intervention or because of the understanding. So it's one of those things. I absolutely have grave concerns about where that's going to end, Mr. Becker, and Mr. Miller can tell you that sometimes I go in funny places around my great concern around that. But I also know that our students are gaining in their ability, and we will see more and more students far more skilled and able to take on more rigorous, and are already in pockets, and I'm seeing nods. And I think that there will hopefully be some stoppage at the state level, and then we'll get there because we're moving in that direction. So.
And one of the pieces, Dr. Langenfeld, that is very noticeable is how our children are able to talk about math. Mm-hmm. And really be able to explain what's happening with that, shall I say, more rich number sense, and multiple ways of solving a problem. And we could speak on this all night. There are some issues we have with the Common Core state standards, such as when they introduce, developmentally introduce some strategic action or problems strategic action that they expect a child to have at a certain age. For instance, I gave the one earlier, counting on in subtraction before you've taught them to count backwards from. That's a foundational skill that's not mentioned in the Common Core state standards, that with Advantage Math Recovery research, we have now entered that into our repertoire in our content essential documents. So we will continually monitor the developmental components that, frankly, the Common Core state standards have been negligent in including and assuming that we know or people do know. And I absolutely want to go on record that the folks that work every day with our children, our educators in our district, are absolutely the most dedicated group of people that I have ever been associated with in my 33 years of professional work. It is nothing that they are doing. It's what can we give them to do their job differently and more effectively. They are really working the work. They have taken on Advantage Math Recovery amongst all the other work that they're doing. They're shifting what they know to shift what they do. They're truly conversing and working collaboratively in teams. So I absolutely do not want it to go on public record in any way that it isn't because of the talents of our teachers. If anyone, it's us. We need to provide our teachers with the support they need to be more effective and efficient with their work. And I believe the district over the last 3 years has really committed to that plight, and you are to be applauded for that.
If there are no more assessment-related questions, I'll step away.
You can go back to your seat.
And I also believe what Dr. Langenfeld is proposing to do with the district is, although we keep our eye on the target at the state level, building our own district assessment system that shows growth and the meaningful growth. And I think that, much to Mr. Becker's point, yes, you have your state expectations, but as a commitment as a district, what we know and we have control of is what we can build below us and with us. And so the state assessment we will never control. That's being done, I hate to say it, to us. But we do have control and assessment system that we can absolutely monitor and ensure that our children are community and college ready in the area of mathematics by developing our own rigorous system of accountability. And with that being said, if there are no other questions, I would like to address a little bit. Again, this is our baseline data. This is knowing that Advantage Math Recovery assessments are based on the Common Core. Our universal does not at this time support the teachings of Advantage Math Recovery. However, the instructional practices, Dreambox, the discovery puzzles, those are all practices in which we can enrich children in. And to our teachers' credit, they're really scrounging, I hate to say, to find the resources needed in order to teach, to this methodology because of the shifts they see in student learning. At the kindergarten level, our math, we actually divide up the Advantage Math Recovery Assessment System to subtests for every grade level. If a student does not do well on that subtest, then we give additional tests. And Jennifer will address that in just one moment. So at kindergarten, we actually give the numbers, number, word, and numerals as a subtest. And this is 65% of our students met the end of the year benchmark and had 2.1, average 2.1 levels of growth. So again, they're growing. Our children are growing. They're coming in at a level, but they are growing, and we are going to address accelerated learning in just one moment. At grade 1, 71% of our students met the end of the year benchmark based on our AVMR assessments. And the subtest is subtraction, addition, and subtraction there. And again, approximately 1.8, average 1.8 levels of growth. You typically would like to see a 2.0 level of growth. And so we're right in the ballpark when we figure we're looking at baseline data. Second grade, this is the structuring of numbers and assessment that is actually the number assessment, structuring number assessment that is administered to all our second grade students. And although only 24% of our students met that end of the year benchmark, we know that the second grade students in that cohort actually had 2.1 percentages of growth, level growth. And so again, they're making progress.
And sorry, the cohort is?
That would be all of our second grade.
Oh, okay.
So this is district data. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. And all of the data I will show you is whatever we look at as macro data. Mm-hmm. It's from a very high view and allows then for schools to then desegregate that data even further, all the way down to the classroom, all the way down to the individual student, down to where we would know exactly what students have under control or have mastered and what would be our next teaching point. We do have the capability of doing that now.
So when you said cohort, it's the whole second grade cohort?
It's the whole second grade.
Okay, thanks.
All children. So in our third grade, as we'll be able to see here as we move up in our third, fourth, you see the less support for the universal around these concepts, the fewer students are making the end of the year benchmark based on this methodology, this theory of teaching. At third grade, 12% of the students, we actually use the subtest multiplication and division at third grade. 12% students met the end of the year benchmark. with an average of 1.7 levels of growth. And in fourth grade, place value is the subtest that is used for our students. And on an average, students made 1.4 levels of growth. And in fifth grade, place value is also given as a subtest, and on an average, our students made 1.7 levels of growth. So in the future, when we come back in our progress monitoring reports, we'll have this arranged so that you will see both by cohort. So when this second grade class will move to third grade, the growth that they'll make because the assessment gets more complex in nature, and also the cohort against second grade to second grade. So, and if there would be any other types of data or display of data that you would prefer to see, we certainly can bring that forward.
A quick question. So, if I understood you right, these third, fourth, and fifth graders did not start with AVMR in kindergarten.
No.
Yeah. So when they start with it in second grade or third grade, are they catching up with something that maybe they didn't get in kindergarten, or is it harder to catch them up because they lost the first 2 or 3 years of AVMR?
Yes, and I think a testimony to that would be our administrators who went through AVMR training and then had to find a student to assess, and many of them their own children because it was summer training, and realized that very advanced students were never taught to count backwards and to use backward strategies. And so there are many strategies that students who have gone through one way of learning, that by using this approach, students construct their own, shall I say, very guided, but their own strategies to solve the same problem.
So as we
you
go,
are correct.
And as our cohort, I mean, the first, second grade, kindergarten, first, second grade group moves in, we should see these percentages increase third, fourth, and fifth
Right.
grade.
Yes.
We should see the percentages increase, and then also as we get into the more advanced math courses, the deeper conceptual knowledge and understanding that the students have will lead to much better performance as well in a variety of settings. So it won't just be our average scores going up, but our top kids as well will be able to do more and apply more with the deeper conceptual theories that they'll have in place.
Well, Dr. Warren, if I don't address that when we get to secondary, I think that same question could be asked relative to when we talk about middle school and high school. I think it's something that I'll try to make reference to, but if I forget, feel free to repeat.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And one piece that the research does show is the increase of students passing Algebra 1. Many districts that have adopted this, children take algebra in 8th grade. So it's just a matter of time catching up to the practices and the supports that our educators need in order to teach in this way.
So in general, we've built a sense of urgency. We've created understanding around new teaching methodologies in a number of our schools. And then now we're looking at what materials do we need to consider as well to make sure that the materials align with our instructional practices. Mr. Becker?
So, isn't AVMR specifically designed as a recovery program? It's not isn't it?
Well, math recovery was actually developed first, and then advantage math recovery was made for the classroom teacher. So it can be used for intervention students that need to be accelerated learning to catch up to grade level, but it can also be used with students on grade level and even past grade level. So an example would be at the kindergarten level, we would expect students to be able to count backwards from 10 by the end of kindergarten. But if you give the number, words, and numerals assessment and you find that they're already able to count backwards from 30, the teacher would know, okay, my next step with this student is to count backwards from 100. So the assessments will help you know which construct or level the students are at, and then how to advance them to the next most sophisticated level. So it can be used with intervention students, but then also with students that are above grade level also.
Jennifer, could you clarify, because the words math recovery are in the acronym AVMR, but math recovery is different. Can you just clarify that, please?
So math recovery is one-on-one intervention at the tier 2 level, where advantage math recovery, we do have that as a tier 1 intervention, and just to help teachers reach tier 1 universal. We do also use Advantage Math Recovery at the Tier 2, and then in that case, it's administered by a math recovery interventionist specialist who is a math recovery teacher. So we use AVMR in 2 different ways in our district.
So is math recovery a subset of AVMR?
Math recovery was developed first, so it's all based on the research of Bob Wright. And then as they worked more with teachers said, well, this is great as an intervention, but we want it in the universal also. And so then Advantage Math Recovery was created.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that, or correct to say that AVMR is our guiding curriculum style at least at the elementary levels? Is that?
Go ahead.
Well, the curriculum would be the CEDs, so that's what our teachers are, that's the goal, is to teach the CEDs. And then Advantage Math Recovery is one of the resources that our teachers have in order to reach those standards that are in the content essential documents, along with other resources such as Dreambox, cross number puzzles, math expressions right now, our current resource. So it's one resource that our teachers have.
Okay, aren't some of those resources you said though those are tied to AVMR?
Yes.
Dreambox is AVMR.
Dreambox, cross number discovery, both align to the Advantage Math Recovery practices. So it's not the same company, but it's we chose those resources because they did align with the Advantage Math Recovery strategies.
Okay, and I know it's, we have a much wider, I remember the days where we'd look at we'd have the cart roll out with the resources and we'd look before the meeting, and that might not still be a bad idea. I'd maybe kind of miss that, but I know there's more, more to it than that as well. I guess I just need to clarify, is AVMR a curricular strategy that works in situations including but not limited to students below grade level?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions regarding Advantage Math Recovery, the assessments? One piece that, and Jennifer's up next, one piece that we will allude to is the interconnectedness of our multi-level systems of support. The beginning of this presentation was around our universal. And then much to the discussion, children who are students who have an intervention or go out or are administered an intervention are in that intervention for approximately 30 minutes, yet they're in their classroom for a 90-minute math block. And so we have to make sure that our intervention system is aligned with our teachings and our universal if we're truly bringing them out to accelerate their learning and then support them in the universal. And so to Mr. Becker's point, it very much is aligned so that it's a continuum of learning for the student, but it's differentiated. And that's one piece that I would grasp around Advantage Math Recovery, is that it is a natural way of differentiating instruction for all children in the classroom from high to low. It is not a remedial program. It's a progression and allows instructors to teach through progression and skills around numeracy. So our next part is actually around Tier 2 interventions, and prior to 2013, or 14-15, we had one math intervention in the district, and students in math intervention were there because they had been referred for special education. Since then, we have built, I believe, a very robust intervention system that complements our universal and also extends into our Tier 3. So I've asked Jennifer this evening. Jennifer, for those that don't know, she is our math teacher leader in the district for math recovery and AVMR. And she also is our elementary math coordinator. And so, Jennifer, if you don't mind taking over.
So as part of the multi-level systems of support, if a student's learning support team determines that they need more support in order to be successful in the universal setting, the student would then move to a Tier 2 intervention. We have 2 different Tier 2 interventions in our district, Math Recovery and Advantage Math Recovery. Math recovery would be that intense one-on-one intervention where you really see the accelerated growth. And so since it is one-on-one, the interventionist is always continually assessing that student and knows their exact conceptual understanding and what skills they have in place. And then this really allows them to target their zone of proximal development. So they're presenting them with tasks that will help move them to the next most sophisticated conceptual understanding or skill. And this is what leads to that accelerated growth and students in just 40 to 60 lessons being able to return back to the universal and be successful. Math recovery and advantage math recovery at the Tier 2 level are provided by math interventionists who are designated as math recovery intervention specialists, which means they've had 1 year of really intense training. And that's what makes it more intense than advantage math recovery in the classroom. Advantage math recovery as Tier 2 would be a group of 2 to 4 students, very similar to math recovery, except now you just have that group of students. During the 2016 through 2017 school year, 136 students received math recovery and 175 students received advantage math recovery. The average rate of growth for math recovery this past school year was 2.1 stages in addition and subtraction. Expected growth is 2 stages, so we did slightly exceed that expected growth. The previous year it was 2.2 stages, so we have 2 years consistently now of our math recovery intervention specialists able to help accelerate that learning for the students. Out of the 136 students that received math recovery, 108 of them, or 79%, made that expected growth. So, any questions at all on the Tier 2 before we move to Tier 3?
The students that were in math recovery and AVMR, is that all the students who needed it in our district, or what's our capacity? I mean, or is there, do we need more capacity than we 100% of the students who need it?
Yes, yeah, we do have limited resources. Most of our schools just have a half interventionist or part-time, and of course there are many more students that could use their services.
But this group includes selections of students from all of our elementary schools.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, because we each have at least a half.
Yes.
Half time.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we just finished talking about how AVMR is universal.
Mm-hmm.
And then students serviced by interventionists were 136 math recovery, but 175 AVMR.
Mm-hmm.
But all the students had AVMR as everybody?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so does that mean that 136 needed something that's related but more intensive, and 175 got extra time and support, but it may have been on things fairly similar to what math recovery would look more different than AVMR, but it's additional time within the same curriculum style for those 175?
Yes.
Okay.
So if a student, after receiving the Tier 2 intervention, if the learning support team decides that they could use more additional help, then they would move to the Tier 3. Or they could also receive another round of Tier 2. That would be another option. If they do move to the Tier 3, we have these 4 different options that you see on the screen: Do the Math, Dreambox, Bridges Intervention, and Path Blazers. These were chosen during the 2015 through 2016 school year by the MLSS committee, and they were chosen because they're value added, so they support the movement where we're going with advantage math recovery in the universal. The 2 interventions that we used most this year were Do the Math and Dreambox, because we found them to be successful. And the data that we have on that is 5 students received 2 rounds of Tier 3 intervention this past school year. 12 students received 1 round. 8 students received Dreambox, and 88% of those made adequate progress according to Dreambox's criteria, which is mastering 3 or more common core state standards in a month. On average, our students in Tier 3 mastered 5 common core state standards per month, and I think that has to do with them getting that one-on-one intense intervention rather than just having it in the universal. 9 students received Do the Math as a Tier 3 intervention. 67% of them made adequate progress according to Do the Math criteria, which is scoring an 85% or higher on the post-assessment.
I think we should address Dreambox. You might be questioning why we're using it as a supportive resource in the classroom, and yet then a Tier 3 intervention. Dreambox does have an intervention side to its adaptive assessment. And it also provides for teachers just in-time reports on what standards and the progress students are making towards those individual standards. So it's really a blended experience of multiple assessments, but Dreambox has come out with a, just most recently over the last 2 years, with an intervention side to that resource. Any questions on Tier 3?
Just a quick comment on Tier 2 and Tier 3. As we pointed out in our past presentations on MLSS, or multi-level systems support, our interventions aim to target very specifically what the individual needs of the students are, but also have the intention of being able to fold the student back into universal as quickly as possible. So that boosting of the student back up to level, but also a focus on making sure that the intervention we use is something that connects that new learning to ways that can be applied in the universal classroom is really important. And I think that we've done a good job with the interventions we've selected and trained up on to make sure that they align with that philosophy.
So the Tier 2, Tier 3 interventions, what grade level were those given in?
Most commonly 2nd through 5th.
Okay.
There was a first grader that also received a Tier 3 intervention.
And we follow the multi-level systems of support framework that we presented, I believe it was last month. So the learning support teams, collaborative learning teams, the schools are very involved in looking at the data, exactly what we have tried in the universal, and then determining if the student does indeed need a Tier 2 intervention. As Jennifer alluded, there's no right number of Tier 2 interventions. We keep trying until we find something that works for the child. And we will continue to explore additional both Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions as they become available. Math interventions are very limited.
And Dr. Warren, just to clarify, when I shared it was the 2nd through 5th grade students and 1 first grade student, that was for Tier 3.
Okay.
Many of our first grade students receive Tier 2.
So the math recovery AVMR list
Yes.
is mostly first? First grade, you said?
I would say a large percentage is first, yes.
Right.
And that is the philosophy that early intervention is prevention.
However, different than reading recovery, the flexibility of math recovery, you can go beyond grade 1. So if it's needed for the student, that would be the decision of the learning support team. But we absolutely, like Jennifer said, early interventions prevention. So in conclusion of the elementary component, I had taken liberty to point out 4 bullet points of challenges. They're not just unique to the Green Bay Area Public School District, but to most school districts across the United States, is really closing those achievement gaps. Providing a universal repertoire or universal design that does meet the needs of all of our learners to the greatest scope available or greatest scope possible. Also, continual collaboration time to teach in this modality and this theory. Teachers working with teachers and discussing how students are taking on learning is absolutely critical. And the continual funding for summer professional development for our teacher leaders. We've spoken about our champions and our teacher leaders, but that continual professional learning. As we move to a potential pilot, we will actually be having our math champions assist with aiding us in the support of teachers at that universal pilot. The opportunities that are very positive that are in place that give us a lot of ground and, should I say, structure in which to do our work and hold ourselves accountable would be the use of a strategic assessment system that measures growth. Knowing that growth, we do want that accelerated growth, never losing sight that proficiency in advance is the goal of everything we do. However, we do know that it comes in stages, and we have to support the child through the learning process. Also, the use of multi-level systems of support in that framework of communicating between multiple departments and multiple professionals that work with a child, the communication with parents, and the ability to monitor a child over their whole academic, life, or their whole exposure to their academic world from kindergarten through 6th grade at this point. Also, the embedded professional learning goes without saying. The research that stands behind by embedding your professional learning and having your more knowledgeable right down the hall from you or some in real time that can come in and assist you if a student is struggling, not waiting for the month of what professional development might be coming next. It very much is tailored at the school, by the school, through their math time and the leadership of their building principal. And again, it goes to that in the multi-level systems of support, that student management system that holds us all accountable to more than just the governing body, but to the students themselves. That we are indeed providing them the best and the richest educational experience that we possibly can at the time with what we have. And that would then conclude our elementary analysis. If there are any additional questions, we'd be happy to answer those before we go on to the secondary.
This actually isn't a question, but it's something that I think about as I look into the future. And right now we're in kind of a state of flux with, we're putting all these resources in, and we're evaluating data, and we don't have all the data we need because only certain grade levels have had the universal and all that kind of stuff. But as we move forward with this, and I mean this would apply to any kind of initiative change, like this, the questions I would have would be, how do we increase our capacity so that, and I don't expect this next year, the answer to this question, but so that I know that every student who needed math recovery or AVMR was able to get it. But I look at that as, I don't want to just, throw money at something, but how do we maximize our resources and follow our data well enough so that in 2 or 3 years we can say we've gotten better at our universal, there's fewer kids that need this intervention, but this is really what we need. We're almost there, not quite. So that's just kind of the, what I would like to see in terms of continued work on what we're doing with this. Because, it's really, the foundation of this is really great, and there's data in here that we can actually then use to make these decisions. But it's, in a day of limited resources, we can't hire a full-time, interventionist for every school and those kinds of things. So anyway, you don't have to, have the answers to it. I don't expect you to have the answers to it, but just that's kind of what I'd love to hear next year, the next year, kind of thing, is this is where we're working toward as we look at this whole big picture.
And we appreciate that, and that's something that we're reflecting on as well, and working with Gwen Strampf on our evaluation system to make sure that it's as informative as possible, because we agree if the best way to enhance our intervention is to make sure kids don't get into a point where they need the intervention in the first place. So making our universal as strong as possible so that the limited resources that we have are not spent on intensive intervention for kids who have fallen behind. So that's something that over time we will be showing longitudinal data. And as Nancy said, this is meant as thinking of the kindergarten as our baseline. We are really looking forward to coming forward in the future with additional growth.
Yeah.
All right, secondary. Appreciate the opportunity also to have a few minutes of your time tonight and to continue building on our story around how our multi-level system of support operates in the area of academics, particularly the area of mathematics. we have a visual for you if you're curious. It's the scope and sequence of how our math content lines up, and at secondary level, as you know, courses are designed that students then sign up for beginning in middle school. If you look first at the row directly beneath the blue arrow, what you'll see following the pre-K-5 experience, you'll see that students are enrolled in courses labeled Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, very creative titles, I know. And then in high school, typical sequence includes algebra, geometry, algebra 2. Now, the high school level, you don't necessarily have to follow that route. That's the route our district has. When I look back at the archive over the past 20 years or so, we did have a time where we had an integrated series where we didn't follow what's known as the AGA method, algebra, geometry, algebra 2. We had an integrated series because the way the standards can be clustered, they can be integrated in a way that you don't have to say a discrete study of a course called algebra, for instance. You can integrate the standards to some extent in the way that they line up I guess at lower levels potentially. Mr. Grossart, for instance, coming out of middle school, do you remember, sir, your sequence of math courses in middle school that you took?
Coming in middle school?
Yes.
I actually went to a private
Yes,
school.
that's why I'm asking.
So I took Algebra 1 as a 7th grader and Algebra 2 as an 8th grader.
Right, and so that means you started with geometry at Preble, correct?
Yes.
Right, so, and have you been able to continue your mathematics journey without huge giant roadblocks in general terms? So some schools, and we see this with our youngsters, and not that you're a youngster, but folks coming into our high schools, not necessarily from our district, who've experienced a different sequence of events, we are able to accommodate their math learning needs. I would also offer, and I'm not suggesting this is your case, sir, but I myself ran into a math cliff. Things went okay for me in elementary and middle school. I had a decent short-term memory. I could memorize the rules. I could memorize the algorithms. I could study for the test and move on. And it gave a false impression that I knew math, that I understood math. But I hit my cliff in pre-calc. And that's where I realized, oh, I guess I don't actually understand how, I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that for the first time I struggled. I see Dr. Langenfeld nodding your head. What's interesting is if I struggle with reading, I probably would be too embarrassed to tell you that right now. I've noticed over the years that people are embarrassed to admit that they struggle with reading. They might be embarrassed to admit that they struggle with technology, right? Diane, occasionally people admit sometimes they want to hide it. But in the area of mathematics, people seem less bashful about admitting, oh, it's math, I don't get it. And that's unfortunate because everybody can be proficient in mathematics. And what I'm learning from my experiences in participating in AVMR trainings and in watching the aha moments of our staff who participate, many of them are having, oh my goodness, that's how subtraction actually works. And I don't mean to discount their knowledge or skill in teaching of mathematics, but an example I like to use is if I said, what's 27 minus 25, almost everybody can say, well, 2. But if I say, if you have a row of 30 people lined up at the movie theater, how many people are between person 25 and person 27? If they say 2, they're wrong. There's only one person, person 26, between 25 and 27. Wow, do I understand how math works? And I don't use that as a trick, because I know that there are math tricks and stories out there, but that's the kind of aha moment. I know, Jennifer, you know the terminology for what I just described. I don't have it memorized, although I guess I was a memorizer. But the point is, it's really powerful to see when the adults who are tasked with supporting our students learn their mathematics, when they understand the math deeply themselves, they can help identify if somebody hits a math wall at the secondary level. So regardless of where you hit your math wall, if you hit it, if it's in Math 2, if it's in geometry, if it's in pre-calc or AP stats, when our secondary staff understand how fundamentally and foundationally mathematics really work, they can help diagnose and help unravel some of that. Because earlier Dr. Warren asked a question about our numbers and our growth rates in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. We see multi-year gaps starting in middle school, if not earlier. And those multi-year gaps compound themselves, right? And we have to, the challenge of closing that gap by accelerating one's rate of learning at secondary sounds very daunting. But what we've been learning is that with AVMR training in particular and the time dedicated for secondary folks to work with youngsters who have fallen multiple grade levels behind, they can actually uncover some of these kind of Swiss cheese holes in their learning of math, and they can make gains much more quickly in some cases than some of our elementary students. It was just a matter of identifying, oh, that's how subtraction works? Oh, so that means, oh, and they really do accelerate quickly. So we're excited about the promises that we're seeing, the promising things that we're kind of seeing there. So So any questions about what you're seeing in terms of our general scope and sequence? The main courses, the general courses are below the blue line, the first level below. Above the blue line are our opportunities to accelerate and move more quickly through the math standards. That's a fairly traditional approach nationally, that accelerating begins in 7th grade where they compact the standards 2 years into a year and a half, and then a year and a half in 8th grade, and then you are able to get into geometry right away in your freshman year. And then we have capstone elective courses that we're continuing to update the curriculum and request resources on as well. We've included the Tier 2 environment at secondary is identified, and you approved this last year in middle school. It's called supplemental math. In high school, it's called math extension. For students that have been identified as needing additional support in the area of AVMR, which we'll talk about later on, as well as some other intervention opportunities, that is the placeholder title that we use in Infinite Campus, so for the students to be scheduled and where they're working with the highly trained interventionists. We have provided significant professional learning opportunities for our secondary staff as well as our elementary staff. We've been transitioning to our current Wisconsin standards, primarily beginning when the Common Core State Standards in the state of Wisconsin adopted them at the end of the 2010-11 school year. So 2010 to 2014, we've worked on transitioning with those standards. We've been developing curricular frameworks, content essential documents, 2013 to the present. Those are embedded professional learning opportunities with our staff. It's their chance to get in and talk with their colleagues around what these new standards mean, how they best align, what the expected outcomes are, the essential learnings associated with it, et cetera. We also have had coordinated professional learning opportunities in the form of participation in the annual Wisconsin Summer Math Institute. We tried to identify by quadrant over each of the past 3 years, kind of went with we looked at some of our performance data and identified some middle and high schools where we thought, hey, we can target them. They didn't have other competing learning initiatives happening maybe at that time where it made sense for them over the course of that summer to focus, plus a chance to vertically discuss with their feeder schools. And so we targeted the East Quadrant initially, followed by the Preble Quadrant. We actually were able to host this Summer Institute at Preble that year in 14-15, and we finished up with West last year. We had to make some accommodations this year, and we were not able to earmark the funds to continue sending folks in the summer. So we hope to revisit that at some point in the future to maybe bring in some folks from the Southwest Quadrant.
Mike, do you want to address elementary?
Yeah, and elementary participated in that as well. I apologize. What we did this most recent year was kind of nice, actually, right? We brought together the feeder schools, elementary in the West Quadrant, with Franklin and West representatives, folks that were going to attend the Summer Institute, and we did some professional learning with them in advance, saying this is what you're going to experience, and we were able to bring them together as a cohort initially. It was based on a recommendation that we had heard, I know, years ago. We often heard from when Kim Powell was a quadrant leader in the Southwest Quadrant, the math nights that folks really found benefit in. We tried to start replicating some of that again because people had such a positive experience with that, and so we kind of brought that back. We also have been working at the secondary level in consultation with Tim Canel and Associates. We finished up a 3-year series this year working with site-based collaborative learning teams, leadership teams in the area of mathematics, where there's been a big emphasis on how teams can work together in planning and preparation before units of study, what adjustments and formative assessment practices they need to do during the units of study, and how they can reflect and respond at the end of a unit of study. These are called high leverage team actions, and we've had consultants on site in association with Tim Canel, the national math consultant, to try to support teams in incorporating Common Core application-based practices in the area of mathematics as well. Also, I'd like to point out that we have been supporting AVMR training for all of our secondary folks who are in designated intervention environments. Building principals have had the opportunity over the past 3 years to identify additional secondary staff who aren't serving in intervention capacity to also participate in AVMR courses 1 and 2, which focus primarily on addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And as you'll see here, our current work involves taking a look at the third AVMR course, a fractions course, which our secondary math interventionist and curriculum coordinator, Cindy Campbell, has just come back from the fractions training. Thumbs up, thumbs down, 2 thumbs up. So we look forward in the future to seeing how that work might play a role in our secondary mathematics environment. Because obviously a middle school or high school student that is falling behind in mathematics, while they might have addition, subtraction, multiplication and division challenges, it might start to be more that fractions decimals piece that we see. So we're excited about what that might look like. Our next steps for professional learning, not a lot of new stuff that we're going to pursue other than the fractions piece at some point. We really want to emphasize continued support our secondary interventionists in the collaboration opportunities. We want to support CLT, collaborative learning team efforts for folks that share common courses. We want to really continue to work on identifying what does it mean to be algebra ready for algebra. And that's something that we've been really digging into over the past year to make sure that students feel and staff feel comfortable with students in their algebra readiness. The final piece I'd like to mention is we need to improve how we are documenting and recording our intervention data and our results within the Infinite Campus system, and we need to support folks in having the time and space to really work the work. That's a professional learning emphasis. In the area of, if I was to talk about my assessment of where we're at in terms of our universal curriculum instruction and assessment pieces, over the past, you'll see some duplication of what I offered a few minutes ago, but it's all part of telling the same story. Starting in 2010, we began our transition to the new standards. At that time, when I look back at the archives, there had been some partial release time offered for folks who were kind of loosely referred to as math coaches. I think it tended to be our department chairs, kind of our math teacher leaders, if you will, that's using that term loosely. And they were given maybe a period or two of release to help with the Common Core transition, to help with some initial curriculum module writing and lesson writing and try to support the transition. There was no official coaching framework as far as I can discern. And so since 2014 and going forward, we've attempted to bolster our support for math intervention by kind of retrofitting that FTE back into intervention environments as well. We've been really focusing on how to clearly define what needs to be taught, what students need to know and be able to do at each grade level in terms of the CEDs and using common assessment development from grade 6 up through Algebra 2. We've brought forward to you each of the last couple years a variety of documents and resource requests for secondary mathematics. I know Mr. Dorff asked during the resource adoption phase around the route of at the high school level, what purpose an advanced course versus a regular course, advanced algebra versus regular, advanced geometry versus regular, advanced algebra 2 versus regular, what is the difference? Really, it's a bit of what I would refer to as a legacy practice in our district, and as our staff at the high school have really dug into what the standards are asking for, East has led the way with saying there's not enough difference between an advanced and a regular other than separating students that might have maybe a greater interest or aptitude towards math-related careers. And so we'll kind of see how that plays out at the high school level in the years to come. There are not differences in the standards expectations for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. And so it's really been a matter of preference that 3 of the high schools have continued to follow that practice, and East has preferred not to. I can tell you when you have less flavors of algebra, scheduling is a whole lot easier. Students have greater access to their electives, and so that is a benefit. And it also helps with teachers in collaborative teams. You have much less singleton assignments to teachers, and it makes collaboration a whole lot easier. Planned next steps in our universal curriculum instruction and assessment area includes working across departments with our special education department and our English language learners department to support the successful integration of students who have special education identifications as well as English learning needs in the universal environment, trying to support a broader range of learners throughout the universal setting, starting in middle school all the way through high school. Continuing to look at what elective courses we're offering at high school and trying to determine which high school courses might we align with college and career readiness dual credit opportunities in addition to our IB and our AP courses. NWTC is currently pursuing a redesign of its college level courses for mathematics, and so we're excited to be part of that team with TurboCharge to also look at how that might continue to evolve. Okay? As we confirm our algebra readiness expectations, I think it's going to help us as we finish each school year and work in summer school planning, as well as transitioning into the high school, between middle school and high school. I think that'll be important as well. Before I get into intervention, any questions on our universal scope and sequence or what we've done to this point in terms of professional learning? You've been very patient with us tonight. I appreciate it. I know it's a long night. We're excited about it, though, I can tell you. Some plan next, sorry, I already touched on that one. I'd like to finish up by talking a little bit about the second and third tiers of intervention. From a historical standpoint, within the teaching and learning department, we had somebody who served as both the math, they served primarily as a curriculum coordinator with the universal focus in teaching and learning. We didn't really have a targeted intervention setting. A lot of times students who might be struggling with mathematics were placed in a 2-period double block, or referred to as an enrichment course. And so you either had algebra or you had algebra double block. Schools have been working on something called a continuous progress piece in summer school. So if you failed a course, for instance, but you could demonstrate that you had a handle on maybe some or most of the content, they would try to identify which parts didn't you quite get. And then as you came into summer school, you could continue your progress, and once you had met proficiency, you'd get that credit for the course. We, as of the 13-14 school year, we had 2 folks from West High School were willing to participate in the initial AVMR course training to give us some feedback on whether that might help us address the multi-year gap that we were seeing with some of our students at the secondary level. They gave us that feedback, and over the course of that summer of 2014, we were able to train 20 more additional secondary folks in Course 1, focusing on addition and subtraction, and 36 additional staff were trained through Course 2 by the end of June of 2015. You can ignore that number 47 on the right-hand side. That was a typographical error that I didn't catch. I apologize for that. But we tried to ensure that any teachers in that double block type of environment were part of the AVMR training so that they could start to apply some of those practices in that double block environment. Okay. In 14-15, we also were able to leverage some of our federal funds to bring in a 0.8 FTE district level tier 3 interventionist. That's when Cindy joined the team. She continued to teach an AP Stats class at Southwest, and she helped kind of address some of our I guess, fire hydrant pieces of kids being pushed into a tier 3 at secondary and not having anybody in the district who really had time or space or training or capacity to address it. And that's when we started really getting a handle on building up a more proactive learning-based multi-level system of support. So in 15-16, what we were able to do is we were able to kind of convert Cindy's 0.8 kind of floating tier 3 intervention into making Cindy serving full-time in the secondary mathematics area, continuing her own learning and intervention practices, continuing in training to be trained in courses 1 and 2 and beyond, so that she could help support the training of other secondary folks. And we've been able to add an additional 45 secondary staff, including folks in our ELL and special education departments of secondary in AVMR courses 1 and 2. I can tell you that as of today's date, we've had 97 total secondary folks trained in course 1, 86 trained in course 2, and we have a potential for 11 additional secondary folks getting trained in that. So even though these are folks who have in most cases, a math major, these folks often are folks who love math themselves, and they've been trained to teach higher level math courses. And in order to help all students access those higher level math courses, it helps to have them have a chance to dig back into what are the foundational underpinnings of mathematical proficiency and numeracy. Over the past couple years, we've really been then scaling up from just a double block system to dedicated supplemental math and math extension environments where students identified as needing tier 2 can get that support. And so these environments are staffed by AVMR trained math teachers. The purpose is a tier 2 intervention in addition to the universal. We have served 325 middle school students and 245 high school students in that tier 2 mathematics environment. We've also tried to provide professional development support in the form of kind of cohort work, 12 hours of intervention collaboration, and 40+ hours of school visits from our staff, Cindy, myself, Jennifer, and others, to ensure that principals and staff members are supported in scaling up their intervention practices. As the school year has come to an end, we have a summer workshop collaboration event plan where we can analyze some of the data. I would also like to point out that in conjunction with our turbocharge subcommittee work, we are looking at intervention from a college transition process as well. That's a stated goal, to not have students leave our school district, go into post-secondary, and suddenly have to get into remedial math. So that is an additional kind of aspect of intervention in that transition piece. Any questions about that before I show you some slides that look very familiar to what you've already seen at the elementary level? Yes?
This is just because I can't envision it. When you talk about the getting rid of the two general and advanced, for those two levels of math.
Right.
So you have somebody in there that needs AVMR and is getting that, and then you have somebody, but I guess I'm wondering how, what's in place to help the teacher be able to address the needs of a wider group of skill sets within one class period?
Yes, and that's a great question. That's part of what, I appreciate East being brave to say we want to really tackle this and say these are all our students, and if the algebra standards are the algebra standards, let's work at how do we support differentiation practices in the universal tier 1 setting. If teachers in that setting have the AVMR training, that will only help them. But we have an additional setting called math extension that for some students identified as needing additional help, they could be placed in addition to that in that separate second period for the math extension as their more targeted AVMR plus Dreambox plus, hey, did you have any questions about today's assignment kind of environment? So it kind of addresses the need to pass your classes, but also helps you understand math more completely. What we typically have seen are, John, right? What John was saying that, so he tackled, algebra and algebra 2 in middle school. So in the way that I think Preble has been running it is you were probably placed in advanced geometry, yes, right, which is the same standards as geometry, but he would have been a freshman in advanced geometry, and most of our general geometry classes might have been students who are in their 10th grade year. So it likely would be our students, it's likely separated by grade level almost in many cases. You don't have a ton of students that take regular algebra in 9th grade and then jump to advanced algebra, or jump to advanced geometry in 10th. They typically would go regular algebra, regular geometry, regular algebra 2. What we're finding is that at some schools, if you start peeling these numbers off too much, you end up with very small sections, very large sections elsewhere, or singletons, and because the standards are the same, that wasn't making a lot of sense. And so East said, hey, let's bust apart those walls and say, whether you're a 9th grader or 10th grader, if you're going to learn geometry, you're going to learn geometry together. So
what happens to the kid that looks at the math problem and knows how to do it and doesn't need much instruction? Are there things in place so that that child can advance from where they are? Because they come in, I mean, you mentioned something about addressing kids who might go into math or engineering or something like that. So what kind of structures are in place in this span of skill sets for helping a teacher know how to take that kid further so that they're not sitting in math class sort of, spinning their wheels because they knew how to do the problem the minute they walked in the door, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would hope that, and hope is not a strategy, so I mean I can give you more specifics I think as we continue down this journey, but part of our work has been in this math consulting work has been to address that very thing, that how are you planning ahead for extension and enrichment things. A specific example would be, as we talk about breaking apart from desks and rows to collaborative work teams, if you present a mini lesson, a focus lesson on a topic, and then you pose problems that have what are called low floor, high ceiling, and students are working, the idea is that they're accessible to everybody, but you have the opportunity to say, okay, you solved that quickly, tell me 3 other ways to solve that, because there are 3. And then I walk away to the next group and say, okay, you need some help, try this, plug in a 2 once, tell me what happens. I come back to you and say, okay, you solved all 3. Now, what would happen if I said, and so it's supporting teachers in knowing how to do that so that within the same environment, you're accessing the problems, but we have a high ceiling. That'll be a continued journey for all of us.
Yeah.
So.
But that is something you're trying to figure out, because that, to me, that's the huge challenge in a wider span of skill sets. It's how to, I mean, that's a huge art to be able to orchestrate that.
And as Cindy has shared with us, as we go through our jurying process of what's expected, what is frankly the assessment boundaries within an Algebra 2 or a geometry, we're discovering that in some cases, the jurying process has been helpful for us to identify where we've not been asking enough or where we've been asking too much. And we can say, oh, actually that fits best in pre-cal. And so that we're still learning about how to continually do that. So that being said, we also occasionally do get contacted by parents or students who say, hey, look, I think I think I get this, and if I buckle down, I might be able to finish a year in a semester. What options are there? We have options through blended and online and other, we have ways that we'd like to, we never want to slow somebody's math progress down. We also want to verify though that they're not just a short-term memorizer who is like, hey, I get it, oh, I don't get it. Dr. Langenfeld? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just as a follow-up, what you just described is that acceleration for some students, and what you're saying is that it's really a student who's really needing to accelerate, you will move.
Yes.
And I think that that's the piece. Oftentimes, people get confused advanced versus accelerated.
Yes.
And usually we're talking about acceleration for students who get it, and they just have to keep moving, or they may disconnect.
Yes, and when I show you these final data slides, I want to come back and make an additional reference to that, because I think I know you're hitting on a very important point that that I know we can improve upon. So this data slide is very similar. It's our 8th grade math proficiency on the state test. It's very similar if you line it up against what you see in the elementary side, and we look forward to having a better handle on what is the forward exam asking for us in the future, and having it be a data point check. We would like to see, obviously, the trend line going in the other direction. I would offer that, as Dr. Ward said earlier, at secondary, these are an accumulation of, what we know is an accumulation of our experiences. So as we work as a system together, the students coming into 6th grade will have had different experiences, and as they come into 9th grade, we just work together as a system. So it's why I'm very proud to work with Nancy and Jennifer as part of the team, and work with Julie Seeflaw and Clyde Hendrickson, Diane Dersh. When we work together, we can, I think, address this as a system. We also take a look at other things at secondary that aren't the same as elementary. We might look, for instance, at passing of classes, because you earn a diploma in our district based on the credits you've earned. And so a 3-year trend of students earning a C or above in algebra might be an indicator of something that we could look at. This particular data set Stephen Miller helped put together for us, taking a look at representing the outcomes for folks who have completed Algebra 1 successfully by their freshman year. So this shows us that, again, a bit of a flat line overall. This includes anybody who's taken a course coded against the state standards for algebra. So we like to kind of pay attention to that. That may be a data point that we, as a system, say that's something that's one we want to keep in mind. This one, though, goes back to what Dr. Langenfeld was just commenting on, I believe, that we need to have more than just a handful of kids who are taking AP Calc BC. It's awful hard to justify staffing a section for a group of 5 or 6 kids. And we're a large enough district, and our high schools are large enough that we should be seeing a full section in all of these advanced courses available at their respective schools. There's no reason why our district should not be there. And that's our stated goal initially, and then we'll build our goal beyond that and say, now we've got 1, let's go to 2. What you are seeing here is that I can speculate on this, and I'm happy to, speculating may be dangerous, but I believe that these are the consequences of us just getting a handle on what the Common Core is really asking and transitioning through that over the past 7 years. These are students who have been part of, this cohort of students have been part of multiple state tests, the introduction of, Beth Taylor in our department, her son is part of that group of students that came through, and they're the first group that had the Common Core, the first group that had the Smarter Balance, the first group that had the ACT, the first group that had the civics exam. Not to make excuses for them, but they've been through a lot of turmoil as a cohort, and our staff have had to be very, very flexible in adjusting to annual changing demands and expectations, and I would anticipate that as we build this system, you will see increases in these scores. These charts show us, the capstone math experiences in our district from a college credit earning perspective, in some cases with the AP or the IB. From a strict dual credit offering, I'm sorry, this goes to, did I skip that one? Oops. Yep, I clicked too fast. From our dual credit offering, you would see that the 2 dual credit courses we offer in conjunction with NWTC right now are college math and math with business apps. Each of those courses, upon successful completion, students earn 3 college credits. So what you can see there is you see a decline in 15-16 of number of college credits earned, but I'm happy to share with you that our preliminary data that was pulled after the creation of these slides. We have an estimated 417 credits earned in college math this year and 126 credits earned in math with business apps this year. So we have had more than a bounce back year this year in terms of those two courses. As I mentioned earlier, NWTC is entering into a course redesign in their capstone courses, dual credit courses, and we'll be part of that project with them. So you'll see a replacement for these two courses, I think, in the future, and we look forward to being part of that. Same trends in terms of the STAR results also. STAR math of the students tested in the spring, the normal curve equivalency. As you can see, our students are right around that, that 50% range, but as indicated with the linking study with the Ford exam, you need to be shooting around that, was it 62.5 on this percent to be projected as proficient on the state exams, but our students right around 50%. At the high school level, although we have less students in many cases taking the STAR by the time it shakes out, we actually are seeing some increases in our students earning above that 50% NCE, which is, I think, a positive indication. In summary, of course, entertain any questions that you may have for secondary or across the system. The challenges and opportunities are similar at secondary as they are at elementary. The gaps exist in terms of multi-year gaps in some cases, as well as gaps that present themselves over the course of a unit of study. We have gaps in access and achievement at secondary. We hope that we can continue to support high-quality summer professional development opportunities such as WSME. We hope we can continue to support master scheduling options for common planning time and collaborative time. That's key for ensuring our students and staff and our parents that algebra is algebra, regardless of which teacher you are assigned. The middle school schedule I would offer presents us a challenge at times in terms of our middle school schedule. I would say 6th grade feels a little bit like a middle school schedule. 7th and 8th grade feels a little bit like a high school schedule. It's something that we've explored over the past couple of years, and I'm looking forward to continuing conversation with our middle school administrators and Tom Ho and John around what could we look at with middle school scheduling. I also believe that Infinite Campus can continue to improve to help us with how we track and document our intervention and data pieces. We work with our technology department. This is not their difficulty. They are wonderful to work with. Our programmers are fantastic. Infinite Campus as a system presents some occasional challenges in terms of using things the way we'd like it to. But we keep working on it. We put in a lot of tickets, and we pester them quite a bit, right, Diane? So. Opportunities. I think that we're very, very, very close to achieving consensus around a number of expectations at secondary, including what does it look like to be ready for algebra. I believe that our collaborative learning teams at the middle and high school levels have worked really, really hard these past few years. They are truly collaborative. They are truly teams, and they are really working together, and that's a big compliment to their department chairs as well as to their administrators at the building level. They've been willing to open their doors and be observed by each other, by consultants, and they've done a fantastic job. I believe that the 3 words under the district sign behind the board that says engagement, equity, and excellence, I think that we are doing a fantastic job of making sure that that is at the forefront of what guides our decision making. Those are values that are both I would say aspirational and core, if that's a thing, if that's fair to say, that we strive for that, but they are very foundational to what we believe. And I believe that Turbocharge is going to help us with our college readiness expectations. I think that Dr. Langenfeld, Dr. Raffin, and Dr. Miller have articulated that publicly very clearly so that our community and our staff and our schools know that we have very big goals, very big expectations, and I want to thank the board for their support over the past 4 years that I've been part of this department. And I'd like to also thank, I've learned so much from Nancy Chartier in terms of how to think as a pre-K-12 system. And you know, Dr. Warren, you asked earlier about taking copious notes around decision-making in tight times and with resources and capacity. I've learned a ton from Nancy about that because you have experience in other smaller districts that don't have some of the resources that we've had, and that absolutely influences our thinking. So that's been fantastic. So
thanks, Mike.
That's all I've got for you at secondary. Happy to answer any questions or turn it back to John to wrap things up.
Someone who was math challenged as coming from a private school to a public school when I was younger, there was a huge difference. It just when I see this explanation of what is now, obviously it's 50 years, but it really, I'm so glad it's out there now. Because you lost like years of math just going from one school to another. And I mean, it's changed so much then. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure, we really appreciate the time to be able to explain in depth our pre-K-12 math instruction, where we're at, where we're going. We realize it takes an investment of time and attention to go deep, but I think that we're able to really share where we're at, and I really want to say thanks to the team as a whole for all the work that they put into this. There were a number of supports and changes and things that were done with great care, and really appreciate our team.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is that it for you, Julie?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's okay. Just checking.
That is.
I didn't see anything else on the agenda, but, all right, I think we should take a break because we've got enough ahead of us that, that'll be good.
Yep.
So we'll come back 5 minutes.
It is 8:01.
Is the superintendent's update.
I'll begin with the calendar, and it says it's going to take 5. I can do it in less than 1. The district office is closed on July 4th, and then July 10th is our teaching and learning work session right here in the boardroom at 5:30, followed by the organizational support work session, and then our regular board meeting is July 17th at 5:30 right here in the boardroom. So both meetings begin at 5:30, July 10th and 17th. That concludes the calendar portion of my report. And Dr. Warren, you were going to talk about board member conference attendance.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, and I don't know, we're missing 2 board members.
So do you want to?
I don't know.
Or we are now?
We are now. I don't think we were last time we talked about this.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody had any more thoughts on how to divvy up the conference money, if we should increase the conference money, or what people are thinking.
Andrew?
So, I don't know how popular this is going to be. Maybe we need the 7 of us here. That might be a better idea, especially with how long this meeting is going. But I don't see what the huge problem would be in having a general guideline with some flexibility for special circumstances. Who knows when something major might come up that particularly relates to a board member's area of special expertise. I think it's helpful for everyone to be able to go to the state WASB, but I don't see why we have to so narrowly define it when it seems like, in a budget of this many $1 million, we're approving changes of much bigger tickets than this all the time. So I don't see what would be wrong with just having some flexibility within a general guideline of something, but maybe we need to wait till all 7 are here to figure out what the something is.
I think we'd have to, I mean, as I see it, if we provide for everyone to go to the January conference, and we want to put some flexibility in for people to go to, other conferences, that we would have to increase our budget for that, I think. Because right now it's you have regular at $225, what's that? Like, oh, that's the regional meeting. That's the regional meeting, okay. So our regional meeting and for all 7 board members to attend the convention, and that includes just 2 nights hotel room, not 3. Mileage, meals, and parking. That total is $6,125.
If we all use the mileage, if we all go.
It's been a long time since
right.
everyone has
But
gone.
so the question is, do we want to make sure that everyone can go to that, and then we add another, $2,000 or $3,000 to the budget? Some years we might use it because there's some opportunity, and other years we don't. But like you say, it's a pretty small dollar number in that.
I mean, if it's-
Because otherwise, we used our money this year going to the
Yeah.
state convention. So there was, based on our budget, there was nothing left. There's nothing left over for anybody to do anything else.
What happens if there is money left over? Does
It just
gets
gets-
absorbed back
yeah,
into the
yeah.
general fund?
I mean, we approve salary adjustments all the time for more than even the entire budget of conferences, and it's always there, so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, but I mean, I think we can't just assume it's gonna be there. We have to make a decision that says we would like to increase our conference budget to
What was the
X
dollar
amount.
amount? for
The
last
total
year?
is-
What has it been?
You have 6,125, oh, you've got, oh, okay, it was 6,670, and that included the convention,
The regional meeting?
and the regional meeting and one other, WASB conference. No, that's just the budget. Cause not all 7 of us went to the WASB convention.
No.
Yeah.
And rarely do all 7 of us go to the regional meeting.
Right, right.
So are you looking for just a dollar amount to?
Well, and that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I think we need to just decide if we wanna keep it at, so the line item right now in the budget is 6,670? That's what you have highlighted? Okay, and last year it was what? You dropped it.
I increased it this year.
Right, but it was less last year.
Correct.
Because we hadn't used it for so long and then.
Did we exceed it last year then?
We exceeded it this past year.
But it was less than what I'm telling you it is.
Less than the 6.
Yes, it was in the $4,500 range. Because that's what we had spent for so many years that she just dropped,
I just kept it.
kept it what we'd been spending. So even if we go back to 6,670, that'll cover the annual convention, except that's at 650 of 875 on this chart.
Annual convention?
Yeah, just 6,875.
875 a person.
And then the regional meeting, 245.
Right, right.
You have 650 here, so
That's the registration.
Oh, and then.
And then this is the registration, $225 each.
Okay.
And then $650 is the 2 nights hotel, meals, lodging, and
Oh,
parking.
got it.
So it's total.
Right, okay,
Is that.
all right.
Mhm.
So if we, go up to what we spent this year, that'll be $6,670.
Brenda, do we need to approve this before the July regional meeting for WASB?
The conference that's happening, it's a conference in July. And I think you wanted to go and I wanted to go. It covers a lot of really
Yeah, well,
educational stuff.
our budget starts in July, so
Right.
we'll
Right,
have
but
money.
do we need to approve this tonight in order to, that's
No,
my,
no.
okay. That
Because
was
we
my
do have
question.
money in the budget, so
Okay.
just
Yeah,
go to
that-
that.
I didn't know if
and
we
then
needed.
It'll play out as the year goes on.
Okay.
The question is, you know, do we want more, or we want to stick with $6,670 for this next year? and
My
see how it
suggestion would be
goes?
to bump it up a percentage as if the majority of the board members would be going to what they've gone to in the past. If you think we need, what do you think we need to bump it up to? Another 2,000? I mean, are we, what's a round number?
Depends where the meetings are as to how much
how
it
many people
costs. I mean,
drive.
when it's in Green Bay, it's nothing, because you don't have
Right.
anything. But if you want to go to conference in the Dells, which seems to be a popular place for conferences, or Milwaukee, sometimes Madison.
yeah.
You know, then there's a little more expense to it.
The state convention is always in Milwaukee.
Yes, it's always in Milwaukee, yeah.
I just don't wanna lock ourselves out of an opportunity if a national opportunity makes sense some year. I
Right.
mean, if we made it,
Well, what if we used to have we used to budget for someone to go to the national conference? I mean, we could budget that, and then somebody would have people would have the option to do the national conference, or some other national, wouldn't have to be the WASB national conference. Would that work for you?
I'd rather go higher than, I'd rather go significantly higher than likely and just underspend it in almost all circumstances.
Yeah.
Because I think the board would have some say if someone wanted to just find something to try to below the 3,000, I think the rest of the board could step in and
Right,
say that
right.
that's
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Doesn't sound like anyone's clamoring to spend the money, it's just, it'd be nice if it's available
Yeah.
if an opportunity arises.
Although I also don't have a problem with just moving to amend it if the special opportunity arises, but maybe that's more problematic for some folks.
Yeah,
Maybe what would work is if we, can you itemize, like, going to the national conference? It's what, 4 days?
Probably 2,000 to 3,000.
I mean, just give us an approximation of that, and we just add that to our budget. I mean, it'll be
Sounds like
probably
a really interesting prospect.
1,500, 1,800, 2,000 probably.
Couple thousand.
Yeah, depending, yeah, I mean, it varies where it is.
Right.
Then we finish
But-
figuring out next time?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll, do we have to take a vote for changing our budget?
No.
Okay. Yeah, and then we'll just figure it out with everybody here next time, at our next board meeting.
Yeah,
One more time.
I think we would just rather have the outset right away.
Right, then
Of
having.
what that
yeah.
is, rather than try to amend in the middle, because then you're
Right.
shuffling and, so, that helps, so, okay? You're good?
I'm good.
All right. I have a success story that I'd like to share tonight that is an important one. Tonight is the last meeting for Associate Superintendent Kim Paulo, who is moving on to lead Civil Hop and that community. Kim leaves us tonight. This is her last official board meeting as an associate superintendent who has had extraordinary leadership and success while she has served here in the Green Bay Area Public Schools. And I want to go on record and just talk a little bit about that. Kim, before I came to the district, came in as a quad lead for the Southwest Quadrant, and it was interesting that Mike Freeze referenced that this evening in that work. And at that point in time began a partnership at Southwest High School with the technical college, which clearly tells me that that whole customization and that partnership was in her blood long before we decided to move really significantly in the direction of education customization and community partnerships. But as Kim leaves the district, we can look to a number of huge successes here in the district as a result of her leadership and vision and partnership with a lot of folks. And she would be very humble and tell you it wasn't all her, but part of that, I think to really think about the Leonardo da Vinci School for the Gifted was something that she took the reins on and really helped to move and shepherd through. The whole strand of International Baccalaureate has been an area that Kim has really championed and actually had oversight of Chapel Elementary and really has been at those 7 o'clock meetings on Monday mornings with the IB team from Chapel and Franklin and West High School, making sure that was running smoothly and believing in that education and the customized ed STEM at King Elementary is an area that she has been on point for. Obviously, the fine arts strand at East High School that began at East, she has shepherded through, and now we see it as, beginning at Webster and then moving into Washington Middle. So that's a piece of the work that she had her touch on. The whole college, career, and community ready department that now exists under the direction of Lori Peacock and Brooke Mueller, really talking about those academic career plans and making sure that we have extraordinary opportunities for our students is that college, career, and community piece, and also that community engagement piece that she has shepherded with Kim Shanek as well on point in building those community partnerships that have been so successful and so important to elevating all of our kids. when I think about that work, and then I think about her hand in the transportation for all of our students, it's about equity and access. The whole turf project that she always swore she was going to be buried under at some point, she thinks she's going to leave us, and that's not going to happen, but has really been about equity and access for all kids, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to utilize fields, not only for the athletics, but also for physical education and opportunities like that. And I think that the other piece with the activities in athletics, I know we talked a lot about it at the work session. The recognition and the amount of work I have sat and watched Kim lead and support goes far beyond just what you would consider as the athletic director kind of thing and activities, but more importantly, it's what's underneath. And so when we think about the importance of coaches and the work that they do, if you think about and the leadership around that, the whole coaches evaluation piece is something that she embraced and wrapped her arms around, recognizing that coach plays such a critical role in the success of many of our children, making sure that we had concussion protocols that were in place so our children were safe. Those are just a few of the pieces, and then some of the big pieces we often hear about, the City Stadium Automotive at East High School, Baylink Manufacturing at West High School, Bridges Construction. These are big pieces that we can all look at as huge successes for our district. I know today Dr. Tony Evers talked about those as well. But I think the piece that besides driving Miss Daisy, I think that the biggest piece that we can always recognize and thank Kim for is that notion around equity and access for all, and all means all. When you think of the academy and the work at Dr. Rosa Minoga Hill, two other big, large successes in our district that Kim had her hands in as well, we can really say that Kim Paula was here, and her work has been extraordinary. So I want to thank you, Kim.
Well said.
And I will be auditioning drivers for the fall. In the meantime, though, we wish you great success. You have done extraordinary work for the children and families in our district, and it truly is a better place because you are here. So thank you.
And I just want to speak, on behalf of the board, and echoing what Michelle has said. I mean, the enormous body of work that you've done for our district is really incredible. And I think what I appreciated was just always knowing that we could always count on you. You had just such a confident, persistent, not flashy, but we always knew you were there, and we could always count on you. And you've done remarkable work for our district, and Sybil Hopp is very lucky to have you.
You did your work with grace, and the three of us actually got the word that we are in mourning. So, put that black jacket on.
I have a black sweater.
You have a black sweater, okay. You
Put it
will
on.
be missed, more than you know. You will be missed.
Okay. So that concludes my report. There are no action items, so thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'm lost in my
Legal department update. None.
None.
She's shaking her head. Thank you.
All right, then we will go to our intercity student council report. I'll turn that over to John.
Well, thank you. So as the end of the year came by, we had many opportunities for good news with the graduation of all of our seniors. On June 4th at the Crest Center, we had Southwest, East, and West all had their graduation, and then on June 7th, Preble had their graduation at the Resch Center. I was actually at the graduation, and I'd just like to say thank you to Dr. Langenfeld and all the other board members and employees of the district who came to the graduation. It was great to see your support there. Also, John Dewey had their graduation on June 8th at their gym. So good news coming from Preble. Our baseball team made it to the state tournament. They ended up losing in the first round last week, but they were undefeated up until that point, so that was great and inspiring for many of the other sports teams at Preble to see that success. We also had many students participate in the state track meet a couple weeks ago. We had many top 10 finishes, including Lucas McCormick, who took first in the pole vault, which is very exciting. Actually, tomorrow, 8 students, including myself, are heading off to Orlando, Florida for the national competition for HOSA, the Health Occupation Students of America. Also later this month, we have 8 students heading off to Anaheim, California for the national FBLA competition. This past week, we had 6 boys attend the Badger Boys State Conference, program including myself, down at Ripon College. So that was a great experience to learn more about the workings of the state government and improve our leadership skills. Also this week going on at UW Oshkosh is Badger Girls State, which our ICSC president is at, Grace Sinclair. And also at Preble today, the Preble Sports Academy began, which is just a way for elementary students all the way up to high school students to stay active during the summer and help them get prepared for their sports seasons in the fall and the rest of the year. Over at Southwest, they also had 2 students attend Badger Boys State, including Stephen Fredine and Luke Davis, who is a member of our ICSC. And Luke was actually, he's the second alternate for the Boys Nation, which is the same kind of thing as Boys State, but at the national level in Washington, D.C. Nice. So if he gets the chance to go, that would be very awesome. Also at Southwest, their entire boys tennis team made it to the state tournament in Madison, and they ended up making it to the quarterfinals, so that was very exciting. Also for their track team, they went to the state meet over at La Crosse, and the girls 4x1 took 8th overall, and their girls 4x200 also took 11th overall. Over at East, they have many students who will be attending the national competition for FBLA in Anaheim, like I mentioned before, and the city stadium is making more and more progress, and also many of their summer school programs have begun, so many enrichment programs throughout the summer at East. Moving on to West, some of the members of their chamber orchestra recently played at a wedding last Friday, so that was kind of a cool experience to see some of those students in a different setting than what they're normally used to playing at. Again, their summer school programs have begun, and they also organized a blood drive last Thursday where they collected 17 pints of blood. Finally, for John Dewey, the seniors completed their capstone projects and presented them at their final event night of their high school careers. So it was just a great way for them to finish out their whole John Dewey experience. And that's all that I have for good news. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next is our legislative liaison report. I'll turn that over to Julie Jantsch.
On the agenda, the very first thing we have is a memo from the School Administrators Alliance, Southeastern Wisconsin Schools Alliance, Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and Wisconsin Rural Schools Alliance. And we're also going to have Andrew speak to the Assembly proposal, and Michelle will be speaking to the Governor's proposal. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph of the memo, which is attached. It says from these organizations, our organizations collectively applaud the attention given to the current K-12 education budget debate regarding proposed increases in per pupil categorical aid and low revenue ceiling. We believe there are sufficient resources in this budget to fully fund both the 200/204 in per pupil categorical aid and a significant increase in the low revenue ceiling. That is our collective position. This has been so fluid this week. There's been so many additions to this that I just got an email that I just looked at from WASB, which I'm going to share with you so that
Andrew and Michelle know about this.
Yeah, no, I picked it up.
Yeah, it's,
Go ahead.
we are hearing that Republican members of the Senate and Assembly will meet tomorrow to try to reach a compromise on two competing education plans, which we'll speak to. If an agreement is reached, the Joint Finance Committee is likely to vote on the education budget this Thursday, June 22nd, and then they ask, we hope that as many people as possible will attend that meeting. So that's coming up really fast. So I'm going to turn this over to Andrew. Michelle was going to speak first. Thanks, Andrew. That's right, on the governor's proposal.
I think that a number of us actually went and testified to the Joint Finance Committee months, it seems like a very long time ago, in support of the governor's proposal of $200 the first year and $204 additional dollars the second year of the biennium, with the acknowledgement that that would be a really nice investment for, or support for our students in our school district. What it would do is what, 4.4 million additional dollars each year, so, which is significant. I think the other piece was there are a number of things that I believe are still in the GOP budget around supports for mental health and supports to improve a number of areas just in terms of students, and I'm blanking out right now. I think that the piece as you know, I think we talked to them about some of our needs around technology and around our ELL students, but I think that there are a few pieces around students that would be helpful. There's a special education piece that would be helpful as well. So I think those are on the table. But I think there's been confusion or conversation that there's a lot of pieces moving, and what you just read was that the WASB said you can do the governor's and you can do something with the revenue limits, and maybe you want to talk about that, and then we can talk about the Senate, the bill, what they're proposing too that just came out. So we've got all these different competing things. So if you want to talk about the Assembly bill, and I actually had a representative talk to me about it today who had spoken to Andy on the phone, and he said he had that bill all dissected and understands exactly what each of those components will do in support or not in support of our district. So if you want to talk about that.
So for about 2 weeks now, I think the Assembly GOP came out with their own budget proposal. Not necessarily, well, interestingly enough, I think the political arena is interesting because this is a formal bill. I respect politics, but I don't always quite understand them. I have to admit that. So what we've been trying to do is both interpret, understand, as well as potentially even be in front of some of this, because it does heavily impact us. So the Assembly GOP, I think it was either 37 or 42 different components that were brought forward in all of this. So it was a budget proposal because quite often things have money tied to them, such as mental health or some special ed components, whatnot. So we wanted to understand this. A couple of the big pieces of it really have 4 different components that we wanted to point out. As Dr. Langenfeld indicated, Governor Walker's original proposal through a categorical aid was a $200 increase in addition to the $250 we already have. $200 increase, and then the following year, 18-19, was another $204. So the GOP, Assembly GOP's proposal was $150 and then $200. What that means is it's a $50 decrease each of the 2 years, translates to about $1.1 million less in comparison to the governor's proposal. So something to be aware of. And by the way, we have been very conservative. I think we hadn't even been using a $150. I think we were very conservative at $100, optimistically maybe $150, but through our projections for our budget next year, very conservative. Another component, there's a low spending threshold. Right now it doesn't impact us because we're above that, but there's been a floor that's been slowly pushing districts up. Back in the early 2000s, I was in a previous district that we were hitting that. They haven't adjusted this amount. It's currently at $9,100. It's been at $9,100 for several years. So the Assembly GOP's proposal says increase that up to $9,800. For 18-19, so not this current year that we're entering right now, but the following year. The interesting part about that is that if there's not money that helps support that, it would result in taxes for districts that have the ability to take advantage of that. but it could impact us. In fact, earlier we talked, when Mike Clark from Baird was here, we talked about the flexibility with that debt issuance. That's a reality, and that's why we structured it in that way. Because once we heard of this proposal, it would impact us because our base revenue limit this year is $9,432. It would impact us if, number one, we had the ability to levy the money, which it grants us the authority, but then also we need the money to help support it. So we either need property growth, property value growth, or we need some state aid to help offset that so we're able to keep property taxes flat, which was a promise of the referendum. So that's something. It's, again, what's the probability? We don't know. It's a proposal. It's being discussed. Third thing, open enrollment. They're talking about increasing the open enrollment, the slot cost or the per child cost, from about $6,850 up $1,400. It's 1,600 students netting out. That would be a $2.3 million increase. So right off the bat, that would be another $2.3 million expense to the district.
Per
Very
year.
important. Per year. Double underline that. Each and every year. Very difficult, financially speaking. Fourth is actually something that does financially assist us. In 16-17 right now, they changed the way that special ed open enrollment students are handled. It was actually for this year, it was a $1.1 million increase in cost. So instead of taking the open enrollment cost and then adding in all of those services that they receive as a special ed student that are in a part of their IEP, they just said every open enrollment special ed student will be $12,000. The way that fell for us is it cost us an additional $1.1 million. The Assembly GOPs actually reverts back to the old method, interestingly enough. So just on paper, that looks like it would potentially be a savings of about $1.1 million. So, and there's a lot more. There's like I said, there's 37 or 42 or something like that. There's a lot there. These are 4 larger pieces that do impact us.
Julie, if I could.
Yes,
Just in terms of the open enrollment, it's a very interesting conversation because talking with legislators to understand why open enrollment was put into place, it was very interesting. One of the intentionalities behind it and the reason there was a lower amount is to really ensure that districts are held harmless. And the intention was never to have one district basically overtake another district. I mean, and so talking with legislators, that wasn't what was intended. I think what the piece and when you look and pull back is one of the things that we looked at is more than half the districts across the state of Wisconsin would be negatively impacted by this. And many of them would be districts that already have a large percentage of high-need students. So, for example, Milwaukee, I think their bill would be $6.6 million per year kind of thing, and they're serving very some high-need students in there that really need additional resources. So it starts to put a burden on some, and often the students who open and roll out you have to provide your own transportation and so forth. So it's a conversation that some legislators are saying it's in there, but don't worry about it. On the other hand, anything that's out there is out there. And so we always are very, very concerned. So we will continue to have those conversations, making sure that people who are making these decisions recognize that negative impact on us, but also other districts as well. So.
And it appears from what I just got that they're going to be speaking or trying to work together to blend the two. Is that your understanding also?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the Senate side of the GOP right now is looking to improve the revenue limit, or raise that ceiling of $9,100, but they want to do it through state aid. And if they do it through state aid, then you don't go out to the taxpayers, because often, like for us, if we were at that place, we would have had to have gone to taxpayers in a property poor district, that's the term, right, Mr. Sarno?
Yep.
To raise taxes. So it doesn't seem to, many of our rural friends are at that low threshold, and they would be going out to their communities as well. So on the Senate side, the Senate is saying, you know, that doesn't seem right. We should be able to do it through state aid. So their proposal is actually through state aid, and it steps. And the WSB, interestingly enough, as well as Dr. Evers, talked about stepping it, not doing all to the 9,800, but improving it over time. And I think Dr. Evers' quote, if I have it right, talking about the fact, he said, "I will not be offended if they use my plan as a blueprint." It's time we reset our priorities and focus on kids working to advance educational equity. So I think that there is, you know, I think the governor was not looking to raise taxes. So that would, the Senate side certainly supports what he was thinking. And I do think that there is still a strong desire to provide for school districts that categorical aid, closer to what the governor was speaking about, because with the GOP assembly side, they were actually reducing that number from 200 to 150 and 154. So $50 a student, and for us, that's more than what, $1 million? $1 million each year. So we're really looking at some interesting conversation, and we will continue. And Julie, you said there's going to be a public hearing, the joint finance, or is it?
What
did you mention that at something?
It was on here, this update. Hang on. Now my phone went. I believe it was this weekend.
Yeah, the June 22nd.
Yeah.
Thursday? They're doing a hearing?
It says, this Thursday, June 22nd, Joint Finance Committee is likely to vote on the education. They're going to vote on that. It says, public comment is not allowed, but a pro-public presence will help remind lawmakers that public education advocates have made clear what our schools need from this budget, and serve as a reminder that we've called for no last-minute shenanigans with policy items not subject to public input. So it doesn't say that they have, it says no public hearings, but looking for a public presence.
That makes sense. I think that the piece, as we've talked with our lawmakers too about the whole open enrollment piece, that's never seen the light of day. It's never been part of any public policy discussion. It is a significant change, and I think because it impacts hundreds of children in school districts across the state, would be something that certainly should be vetted out. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of the Blue Ribbon Task Force around equity and funding, that commission that's being put together that I've been invited to serve on, to really push some of these pieces and really, you know, overturn, you know, flip things over and see what's underneath. I think that our concerns around ELL funding and some of the real categorical aids that were supposed to be there haven't been there. So lots to think about, but I know we've talked about a letter to legislators, and I think that is it. I think we probably will want to put something out there before Thursday in support of the 200 and 204, I would think, and then also looking at support for increase in the revenue limit coming out of state aid. Those would be the two areas, and that everything else that hasn't seen the light of day should be afforded through the Blue Ribbon Commission to really be vetted out. All other policy pieces that are in the document. That's where I would.
Do we need to vote on the letter, Brenda, or no? Just put the
So
letter
we
on.
can
Okay.
draft and put something together and make sure it gets in their hands before Thursday would be the goal. So we'll
Send
do
it out
that.
electronically.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, send it out electronically. Don't count on the mail to get it there. So.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we wouldn't get it. But I
I'm
mean,
teasing.
Usually prefer electronic anyway.
So, I mean, does that make sense to people?
That does.
I believe so, yeah.
So,
Then the next item on the agenda is the 2017 Assembly Bill 268, which is attached, and that is, this bill limits to 5 consecutive school years the number of years for which a school board may seek approval from voters in the school district to increase the revenue limit applicable to the district. Current law generally restricts a school's district's per pupil revenue raised from state aids and property taxes in a school year to the total amount received per pupil from state aids and property taxes in the previous school year. Current law permits a school district to exceed this revenue limit by passing a resolution and submitting the resolution to the electors of the school district in a referendum election. If a majority of the electors of the school district views to approve the referendum, the revenue limit of the school district is increased as specified in the referendum question. Andy, can you speak to that as far as what we just passed, that referendum, and?
I would want to understand it a little bit more. The earlier language that I was aware of is the recurrings. So we just passed a 10-year non-recurring. So I'd want to make sure that that bill would not cut in half the referendum that was just passed to exceed the revenue limit.
So would they?
Yeah, I'm not
Were
sure
you
if
down
it's
there?
clear. Yeah, I was
It's
down
not,
there, but
yeah.
actually, they didn't actually get to the 268 testimony by the time I had to leave and go testify at the Senate committee. So I heard most of what I heard was on 282, which is you have to have, in order to go to referendum, you have to hold your vote you can't have a special board meeting to hold your vote, to have your vote on whether to go to referendum. The 268 it's not clear to me if it's retroactive or not in terms of saying, that if you passed a 10-year referendum, they're gonna go back and take away 5 years of that. What I read didn't make that clear to me.
Brenda, can I move that up? Do you want to speak on that when you?
Which one?
When you made the testimony this last week on the revenue?
Yeah, well, it's not really moving it up.
It's not,
It's this,
it's right,
right?
this, yeah.
268, yeah, okay.
Yes.
That's why I'm confused.
I have I'm sorry, I have it on 2 different things here, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm only looking at one. Yeah, and again, I snuck in a little bit about 268, but they were only allowing us to speak on one bill at a time. And so it started at 10, and by 2 o'clock, they still were on 282, and they had, I think, 5 different bills that they were hearing on. So I did not get to hear testimony on 268 at all, because the Senate was doing testimony on both bills. So anyway, so I can't tell you what the testimony was against or for 268. There was a lot of people opposed to 282, which is, again, is the requirement to hold the saying that you can't hold a special board meeting to vote on whether to go to referendum. And I think all of it was kind of pulled in together. The author of the bill, Senator Strobel, a lot of the questions from the Assembly Education Committee had to do with, these bills just, you don't trust the school boards that are in place, that, it's taking away local control, you're taking the community's voice out of it, those kinds of things. That was from the Democrats in the Assembly Education Committee, because they asked Senator Strobel questions for about an hour, and really had him clarify all of that. But so I don't know what the offshoot of all of that will be.
So we're watching that, and you're going to speak to 282 later down the.
Oh, is that? I'm just looking at your
Yeah,
agenda.
I have it that when you testified, I'm speaking against Assembly Bill 282. Do I have that confused with the 268?
Well, there's 2 bills.
Two
yeah.
bills.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I'm reading
And
that wrong.
and if my testimony at the very end has like 5 sentences against 268.
Oh, okay.
But most of my testimony was addressing, it was really addressing the local control piece and the fact that we can't get a referendum passed in our community unless we engage our community, that you can't just sneak a surprise vote in and put it on the ballot and expect that it will pass. So my which also goes back to that local control of, the whole, of giving us the right to go to referendum and then squeezing putting more and more limitations on how we go to referendum, how often, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Can we post her testimony on that?
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
It's posted.
Did you put it on the website? Yeah. It's on the website.
It is on the website, right, and it's attachment
Good,
too.
in case somebody wants to see it. I think that the piece that I think legislators probably were surprised by is that the board spent more than a month in deliberation, that the local newspaper cited, and when this referendum bills came out, cited what the board had done in terms of transparency, that there were more than 70 community meetings and on and on. So it may be, I think that the challenge is how much is not enough, how much is,
Right.
how many meetings do you need to have to inform your public, and how many times on television and those kinds of things. This was never intended to be anything but transparent. And it was.
Mm-hmm.
And there was opposition, and that was there too. That's the other piece. So it wasn't like it was slid in the middle of the night to move that, so.
Okay, we'll move on to the guns open carry law, which is also being addressed. And we had sent, the board had sent a letter January 22nd, 2016, and on LRB 1820 at that time. And I think what we're looking at is, do we want to decide to revisit that letter, resend a letter? It's been suggested that that might be a good thing, to resend a letter on behalf of this board in regard to the concealed weapon, that open carry law. I think I'm asking the board for advice on that, if we're going to do that. Does anybody have?
What's the timeline, do you know, for the vote on that?
I don't have that on here, that didn't come through.
I mean, I think it's good to go on record in
Just go on record.
opposition. I suspect most of this letter is still pertinent.
Yeah, and it is posted,
And that it would take not a tremendous amount of time to make sure it's still consistent with what the current wording is, what the current bill is. And I don't remember what last year's bill and compared to this year's bill, if there's significant changes. I mean, if it's the same bill, we just send the same letter and put a new date on it and a new bill number on it.
Well, and sometimes it just comes back.
Yeah,
keeps
it just
cycling
cycles
back,
through,
and if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken, it's very similar, so.
Didn't we also send out a letter with additional, like a chief of police?
Yeah.
And they're not, I don't see their
I'm
signatures
trying,
on this
if it
one.
was that same one, or there was another.
Another letter?
I can't recall. This was several years ago, because it was, the chief, is it the same
It was
chief?
it's
It wasn't
Todd
Andrew
Thomas,
Smith.
who was
Yes.
in Appleton now.
Yes.
No, he wasn't the chief. It was, Todd Thomas was a lieutenant before he left.
Yeah, but
Okay, he wasn't chief.
No, it was Molitor who I sent it
Tom
with.
Molitor,
Chief
yeah.
Molitor is who I sent it with.
Do we want to meet then with the current chief, seeing as how he's new, and with the school resource? I think is it a lieutenant that handles the school resource? I'm not sure. Do we want to meet with them and discuss the differences in the two bills and their take on it, on what's coming out of this?
I think what would be helpful is understanding where the bill is at in process.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
sometimes what happens is the bill reoccurs and it's only sitting on one side and it's really not even introduced in the other side. So maybe we can dig a
I know.
little deeper and find
Yeah,
that out.
figure out where it is.
Figure out what's moving, because it seems to have quieted,
Quiet down.
legislation is interesting. So we need to just follow up and figure out where things are moving.
I just get worried that if they're going to come to a compromise on the budget by Thursday, in what all would be included in something like that. We've just seen it in the past where things just get put
added,
in.
right.
Yeah, so I just get worried about that. Not necessarily with the gun piece, but with the
Other
referendum
things,
question
right.
or whatnot. So you never know what's going to be there in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll write that down, Julie.
All right, yeah,
Explore
okay.
that tomorrow.
I think the other item we were going to address is the state budget items to watch. There's SB, I have that 191, but like I said, everything is moving so fast this week. SB 191, and that's the bonding resolution. That would prohibit a school board and unified district from voting on a resolution to exceed a school district. That's a part of the revenue limit, 190, and SB 195 is also a part of that school referendum bill.
They're
So
actually
that's-
they're partner
They're
bills.
partner bills?
Those are the two Senate bills that match 282 and
268.
268. Yeah.
Okay.
And those are the two, I went to this, it wasn't the Education Committee, it was like the Senate Operations Committee or something like that, and testified on those two Senate bills, but they're essentially the same referendum.
Same, okay. That
bills.
was, I had,
It was interesting that you say that because the companion bills that went with were not in the education on the Senate side. Is that accurate?
It wasn't an
the
education committee, no.
Right, and that
But
was.
It's Senator Strobel's committee. He was in
Correct.
charge of the
And
hearing.
that was interesting, because typically, they used to go to the education committee.
Right, right.
So that's why it's an
little
interesting
bit-
twist in
Yes,
this.
a bit different.
Yep, yep.
any questions on that? And our last item on the agenda is the School Choice Wisconsin. There was an article from that I wanted to just mention, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, published June 13th, and it's a school choice bill that's on a fast track in the legislature, which would eliminate some accountability requirements for private schools and the state-funded voucher programs, including those that dictate standards for meeting average attendance and promoting students from one grade to the next. It would also mandate that the schools conduct background checks on employees similar to those required of public schools and penalize schools that knowingly falsify information. It allows public schools that lose special needs students to private voucher schools to recoup those funds from the state and local taxpayers. The catch-all bill is a result of an unusual collaboration between primarily GOP lawmakers, school choice advocates, and the State Department of Public Instruction to, they say, eliminate duplicative and unnecessary provisions and streamline the administration of 4 separate voucher programs. And a problem with the current law is that DPI does not have the authority to actually compel voucher schools to turn over data about average attendance and student promotion rates and parent involvement. The law simply says the school has to annually satisfy one of 4 standards. And the article from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel goes on to say the Democrats from Sonny Pope of Mount Horeb raised concerns about the speed at which the bill is moving and what she sees as a double standard in her GOP colleagues' willingness to address issues confronting voucher versus public schools. That is also attached in here, and I think we have to watch that.
I think it passed.
That did not get.
It did pass.
It did pass.
Yeah, I think I heard that.
And I don't,
Didn't it?
I did not. I did not get that either. I've
I
been,
heard that somewhere.
and did you? I did not.
Really? I didn't.
But I don't remember where I read it or anything, so.
I do not have that. So that's also attached and something to watch for, and we'll double check and see if that got passed.
Yeah.
or-
What is the number on it, too?
Assembly Bill 383
Okay, thank you.
is what I have, and I think that's it on the agenda for the legislative liaison
All right,
report.
thanks, Julie. Next is district events. I do have one.
Thank you, Andy.
There is a new cafe at the Aging Disabilities Resource Center. It's called Grounded Cafe. It's a grant sponsored endeavor. And I know that our East High School students will be, the cafe is run like a regular cafe. They serve coffee and lattes and food and stuff like that. But the people that work in the cafe are people with disabilities, and primarily, I think, people with disabilities. And I know that our East High School special education teacher that works, I think, with the coffee shop at East High School, they have kids coming there. I don't know if they'll be there this summer, but certainly in the fall to work.
Who said yes?
Summer or just fall?
For the summer, they're gonna start.
And do you know what days? I forgot to ask.
They started today.
But I mean, they don't work every day.
That's true.
I can find out.
Because it's, I think, but anyway, and they've had a soft opening. They haven't had their grand opening because they're still trying to bring their people up to speed in terms of the work. And you know, it's going to be a challenge because it's giving work opportunity experience to people with disabilities, and then they get a job. So then they got a whole another, you know, crew of people to train up, which is the goal of the whole program. But it does add a little bit, you know, it's not something that's going to be, you know, Starbucks quick.
No, we met some of the baristas at the FFA banquet.
Oh,
they were there.
Yes, and they were honored.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they announced that, and then.
So anyway, I think it's Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I just thought I'd highlight that.
That's very cool.
Is there anything else anyone would like to bring forward? All right, we're almost done. We'll go to our teaching and learning system report, and that'll be facilitated by Katie Maloney.
Thank you, Brenda. We have several action items. The first, I move that the Head Start Program State Supplement Grant as presented be approved.
Second.
And these were all things that were discussed at length at the work sessions.
Sandy? What'd you say?
She said
Oh,
McCoy.
McCoy. Couldn't tell if it was Warren or me.
Becker?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Janch?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye. Carried 5-0.
I move that the school counseling content essential documents as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Janch?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the parking lot expansion project at Preble High School, as well as continued exploration of task force recommendations as presented, be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Janch?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the K-5 elementary English language arts resources be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Janch?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
McCoy? Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the elementary math resource pilot as presented be approved.
Second.
And this
And when was that presented?
was not. This is
That's
This
what-
is something new. Were you going to present the math pilot, or Nancy? And we have the information in front of us. I just didn't know if you wanted to say something formal or just answer questions.
Well, the recommendation is that we can move forward with a math pilot. I apologize for not bringing this to your attention at the last work session. At that time, we had the urgency set that, how do I put this? Principals and teachers want this adoption. We dialed it back to say we need to look at a pilot, a full-fledged pilot. And so we've worked to develop not only a pilot evaluation plan, but also a communication plan, and identified 7 schools that we felt would give us the best scope of data that we need to make a decision moving forward. There will be periodic times within the calendar that we would like to come back and present the progress we're making in the pilot. And then at that time, potentially ask the board if we could continue to move forward. But we also would like to strongly encourage board members to review what it is, the resource that we're piloting. What I would do is match you with a math champion who is on the review committee to take you in an in-depth study of the resource, and they'd be more than willing to do that. We also offered that to our teachers. A little different format that has been done in the past, but with their depth of knowledge, they would be able to take teachers through a real comprehensive look at the 3 components of that major resource adoption.
And we apologize for the non-traditional timeline for the item that we're bringing forward. It came from when we looked at our math scores, that sense of ownership and urgency around doing everything we can to enhance our instruction for our students. And then with a site visit in late May, a huge sense of interest and commitment from a wider number of principals than we were anticipating. And so it was finding that right area of focus where we could do a very in-depth pilot that analyzed the effectiveness of the materials, but also allowed for some of the pioneering principles that were more than ripe and ready for it to go deep with it, so we could see how well it works, so that we could give them the support and then continue from there, providing that the evaluation goes well and we get the results that we believe that we will.
What are the 7 schools?
Yeah. The 7 schools are Chapel, Dans, Doty, Fort Howard, King, Nicolay, and Tank. We did set criteria, or we looked at criteria at 16 schools interested in moving forward with a full implementation if it could happen, and we determined that we'd like to pilot, but have a broad pilot. Many of the Dans, Fort Howard, Nicolay, and Tank were our first adopters of AVMR. So you have folks that have been working with AVMR course 1 and 2 over a 3-year period. They're currently finding the resources they can that supports teaching in this manner, but it is disjointed and it is not comprehensive in nature. One component of the Bridges math pilot is actually a component that a number corner that you can purchase as a standalone that supplements any curriculum or resource that a district is using, but that's just one of their components that we feel even testing that piece would be of a benefit and give our teachers the resources they need to move forward. Right now they're scrambling to find resources to teach in the way that they've been trained or adopted and accepted the AVMR practices. They see the effect of their students, but they do not have the resources to make sure that they're offering a comprehensive universal approach.
Go ahead. Oh, we're gonna. Okay.
She's in charge.
Oh, I was looking to see who was.
Actually, you're technically in charge, but that's okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And then I'll go next.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to share that I think when we had conversation about this, we know that there are a number people see the need, obviously, when we're looking at our scores. There is a sense of urgency. One of the things we want to make sure is that the schools that are rolling it out are well supported, so this will afford central office. You talked about that earlier. The teachers are working very hard, but it's a question of do they have enough support to be able to do this. So wanting to make sure that those pieces are in place. I would offer this, though, if we start moving down this road, and we've talked about this, and have to move relatively quickly, we start to see some significant gains and people are ready, and we're getting teacher feedback from the teachers that are in the trenches to bring that back to the board. We may come back, not wait a year. It might be in the middle of the year, so it's really we have a plan of measuring, and Gwen's been very involved with Nancy to measure this pilot. This is a foray that we're really going into so that we don't find ourselves in a place of doing a significant investment without teacher input and we often hear we don't evaluate enough. I think that the school perception survey said we don't have a good method of evaluating our rollouts of new initiatives. So it's really looking at what is the feedback we're going to get from teachers in terms of how they feel it's working, not only from their ability to have the new learning, but what does that look like in terms of next steps. So really doing a real in-depth pilot to make sure. I think Nancy and the team really believe this is the right tool, but we're going slow to go fast is really what it amounts to, and making sure that the investment is really what we think it is. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I feel badly that 16 principals expressed an interest in it, and I hate to cut that in
we do too. So then the question becomes, do you just go and then you hope you got it? You know, I mean, that's where there's a lot of interest, but when you look and start looking at where Nancy actually looked to see what the background is, just because I think I want that doesn't mean I'm ready to have, that I don't have the AVMR 1 and 2. We're still in process, but we know that's where we want to go and we see it. So I would assume that's why this is going to be closely monitored. Now, we could go out and make a very large investment, and we've done that in the past as well. So we haven't done a lot of real in-depth piloting that would provide those results. So,
we have been researching different resources. I'm really taking a lot of credit for the teachers that did the in-depth study of the just right fit that would be our universal that matches our AVMR and our math recovery system. And knowing that they'll only be as effective as your universal instruction is aligned to them, and that's the only place you're really going to get accelerated growth, came down to 2 resources in which those teams went out and actually visited school districts. They brought back this particular resource, and this is the resource. Then we took a team of administrators to speak with the school district's administrators on what was the implementation. This is heavy learning, and like Dr. Langenfeld said, we do want to make sure that we have adequate supports in supporting our teachers in this process. The company will send trainers. We will develop a trainer-trainer models where we'll have not only our team at Teaching and Learning, but also various math champions who are trained. Brittany was one of them. I said I wish she could have stayed tonight for this presentation. She was one of the math champions who dug very deeply and took a full year to research this, and we do have all the quantitative data and qualitative data around the work that they had done, and then move this forward. But we want to make sure that it is supported and our teachers have the support that they need to implement this, especially in their first year of implementation. The pilot will give us a lot of information as to what level of support they will need. I echo what Dr. Langenfeld said. Do we know if we need a year? We don't know, but we do know that we have a mini, shall I say, pseudo action research set up, so we're going to match demographically schools that have implemented or are going to implement the pilot with a school that is not implementing. And then we have identified periodic checks that we'd like to keep updated and bring back our progress.
I think that the piece around this is there is a change in practice for the teachers. And until we understand where they're at, because it's, you know, as a principal and you know, Mr. Magus and I sometimes have to be, we were and are the kind of leaders that see things that say, yep, I know that's the right thing, but it's the capacity of the people in the trenches that will really understand. You know, because we haven't rolled this with anybody in a classroom yet.
Okay.
And that's the piece, to go out and just do a blanket and not understand exactly what they need is really my caution in this. I mean, because I've been the one saying, go slow to go fast.
We have a small sample. We, the math champions, the principal, and the classroom teacher worked, because we know as it becomes implemented, if it's implemented, they have to work as a team for this to be effective. The principal, the math champion as a support, and the classroom teacher. And we do have a few of the surveys back that the children were very engaged. It was different teaching. It was intensive. You have to do a lot of reading before you implement. But about December, all the districts that we've researched and have actually a conversation with, in December it clicks and it starts to flow, and the children really, they're really engaged. And you really won't know if you're in a science classroom or a math classroom or an English language. It's so integrated into higher level and applied theory that it's quite fascinating to watch in progress. It's be best to see it than to talk about it.
So with this representing, when we're tying the AVMR math practices to the new materials, as we said, it represents a moderate, at least a moderate departure from the way that we've done things. So making sure that's well supported and well evaluated so that we can learn what are the strengths and weaknesses and pitfalls to avoid as we expand it, provided that it does what we feel quite confident that it will do, that when we do start seeing those results and we feel comfortable moving forward with a broader number of schools, we'll have insights into how we can best support those schools and best support those teachers for greater fidelity and accuracy.
Just in addition, these same schools will be gearing up with AVMR too. I mean, the ones that may not be included.
Right.
So they're still building.
Right.
So it's not like nothing's happening while they wait.
So they can build their professional development while they're waiting for the materials, and then as they reach that point, knowing that the materials are going to be successful, we can come back and request more materials.
And continue to refine their working systems within their schools that support math instruction and math time, much like they've developed over the last couple of years around literacy. It's essential that those structures are in place because it will take the full team for this to be effective. And we absolutely want to maximize all of the data that we've looked at and all the school districts that we have conversed with saw immediate increase in student achievement. We're confident that this will do the same in Green Bay, give us that accelerated learning that we desire to have.
So we appreciate your consideration of this item. With the timeline, this timeline would allow us to have the materials ready so that we can have the trainings in place so that these schools can move forward for the fall. Thus our desire that we could move forward in June rather than delaying till July.
Any other questions?
No, they answered it.
Sandy?
McCoy? Aye. Becker?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Canch?
Carried
you very
5-0.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Michelle's concern. If it really is an aha moment, then bring it back sooner than later.
But this, we talked about it because, I mean, we've had a lot of conversation around this.
Yes. Right.
And I think what's really hard is the intention. It was very interesting because the team was ready to do the pilot. And then these principals went, and then it was like, do you go here or do you still do the pilot? And after we talked a lot through it, it was like, we probably should do the pilot, but monitor it carefully and make sure that we're getting
Yes.
data and move it as quickly as we can around what people have the capacity to do.
'Cause, I mean, I think this is a great idea,
Mhm.
just because, I mean, changing curriculum and how you teach is a huge undertaking, and we could spend $3 million on everybody getting this resource, but if we don't have the
Right.
we don't have the manpower to support teachers, then our resource just falls
right.
dead in the water. So I think, you know, it's go slow to go fast.
Right.
I mean, I just feel like as long as we're monitoring it and moving it quickly, if it is working, and we do think we can take it district-wide, I just think we have a much better chance of it succeeding in a lot more schools than we would if we just threw it out there right away. And just because the training, I mean, it sounds like that AVMR training is what's gonna help you implement this new curriculum, and so we can spend this year catching all the rest of the teachers up that haven't had that second, whatever it is, the next level of AVMR training.
So we appreciate this. Again, I think the urgency that's created around the professional development and change in philosophy that our teachers have had make the situation really ripe for these new materials, and a ambitious and robust pilot will be very informative to us so that we can support the entire district in our likely full adoption.
Thank you very much.
All right, I move that the parent and guardian rights in relation to district programs, activities, and student privacy policy as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Canch?
Aye.
McCoy? Aye. Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
I move that the wellness policy and procedures for implementing district wellness policy rule as presented be approved.
Second.
I'm going to ask to divide the question and vote on the policy and rules separately.
Is that a motion?
I move to divide the question to take the policy and rules separately.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation? All right, Sandy?
Are we voting on the policy?
No, we're voting on whether to
just who
split.
this- Okay. Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Jans? Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
So,
I move that the wellness policy and procedures.
I don't think you
No,
have
you
to
don't have to,
because
okay.
that already happened.
Okay.
We're split.
Okay.
I think we're automatically on the policy. 'Cause it was
So
the
we'll
first
vote
thing.
on the policy first and then the rule.
yeah.
You ready for the policy?
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy? Aye. Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Jans?
Carried 5-0. Now we have to make a motion for the rule, right? Because that wasn't on the table.
I
Yeah.
don't think so. It's
No, because I
redivided.
made the motion for both, and he asked them to be separated.
You
Divided
split
the
them.
question,
Right.
so I think they're already, I think when you do that, it creates two questions right then and there, but I guess it's not that big a deal.
All right, so the rule's on the table.
Right.
Everybody ready? You don't want to say
Any
anything, Andrew?
discussion?
Well, I think we have to have the policy to meet federal requirements, and I think there's portions of the rule that are, maybe have to be there, but I guess part of this is taking a stand on a mandate, and part of it is some areas where I think there could be some confusion, and part of it is what the last one did to the school stores. I realize it's probably gonna be 4-1, but I'm just taking a stand on this one.
Right, thanks.
Okay.
Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Jans?
Aye.
Becker?
No.
McCoy? Aye.
Carried 4-1. I would entertain the consent
So
agenda
moved.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sandy?
Warren?
Aye.
McCoy? Aye. Maloney?
Aye.
Jans? Becker?
Aye.
Carried 5-0. We do have a closed session. I'll leave that motion. Closed session has been scheduled for Monday, June 19th, immediately following the regular board meeting. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851A and F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, to wit, student appeal of denial of interdistrict transfer request. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, to wit, personnel matters. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, more specifically to wit, potential contracts, property purchase. The meeting will begin in open session to consider the appropriate motion for a closed session so provided by law.
So moved.
So, Sandy?
Becker?
Aye.
Maloney? Aye. Jans? McCoy?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye. We will convene across the hall.